The Ghost in the Mansion. Kindly hit the subscribe button to enjoy more of the stories, thank you. The sound of crystal glasses clinking echoed through the marble halls of the Cross estate. But Ethan Cross wasn't invited to the celebration, he never was. At 28, Ethan had spent 12 years living in the shadows of one of America's most powerful families, invisible despite sharing their name. Tonight, as the Cross family celebrated another record-breaking quarter for Cross Industries, Ethan sat in the mansion's kitchen, eating leftover catered food while reviewing quarterly reports on his laptop. Ethan, the sharp voice of Victoria Cross cut through the ambient noise of the party. At 35, she was the eldest of Harrison Cross's biological children and the most ruthless. Her designer heels clicked against the marble as she entered the kitchen, her expression one of barely concealed disgust. The caterers need more champagne from the wine cellar. Make yourself useful. Ethan looked up from his laptop, his dark eyes meeting her cold blue ones. Of course, Victoria. He'd learned long ago not to argue, not to remind her that he wasn't actually the help, despite how the family treated him. 12 years of being the charity case had taught him that resistance only made things worse. As he made his way to the wine cellar, Ethan passed the grand ballroom where the party was in full swing. Through the doorway, he could see his adoptive father, Harrison Cross, holding court with business leaders and politicians. At 72, Harrison was still commanding, his silver hair perfectly styled, his presence filling any room he entered. Marcus Cross, 32 and devastatingly handsome, was charming a group of young socialites near the bar. The designated heir apparent had never worked a real day in his life, but his natural charisma made him the perfect face for the family business. Or so everyone believed. Sophia Cross, 30 and beautiful in an ethereal way, was discussing her latest charity project with a group of philanthropists. She was the kindest of the three siblings, but her kindness had never extended to defending Ethan from her siblings' cruelty. None of them noticed him pass by. They never did. In the wine cellar, Ethan selected the requested champagne, but his attention was drawn to something else. Voices coming from Harrison's private study, which was directly above the cellar. The old mansion's heating vents carried sound in unexpected ways, something Ethan had discovered years ago. The quarterly numbers are impressive, but we need to discuss the succession plan, came the voice of Robert Sterling, Harrison's longtime attorney and family friend. There's nothing to discuss, Harrison's voice replied, tired but firm. My decision is made. Harrison, you can't be serious about this. The board will never accept it. Your children will contest it. My children have had 12 years to prove themselves worthy of this legacy. They've failed spectacularly. Ethan froze, champagne bottles forgotten. They were talking about the inheritance, about who would take over Cross Industries when Harrison was gone. Victoria is brilliant but ruthless to a fault, Harrison continued. She'd destroy the company's soul for short-term profits. Marcus is charming, but has never shown real leadership or work ethic. And Sophia, bless her heart, would be eaten alive by the corporate sharks. So you're really going to give everything to the adopted boy? Ethan's heart stopped. Him. They were talking about him? Ethan isn't just the adopted boy, Robert. He's the only one who understands what this company really means. He's spent 12 years learning every aspect of our business, while my biological children played at being heirs. But Harrison, he's not blood. The family will never accept. Blood. Harrison's laugh was bitter. Blood gave me children who embezzle from charity accounts, who insider trade using company information, who treat employees like disposable assets. Blood gave me heirs who see our empire as their personal piggy bank. Ethan's mind reeled. Harrison knew about his children's crimes? How long had he known? Ethan has integrity. He has intelligence. Most importantly, he has the heart to lead with compassion while maintaining the strength to make hard decisions. He's the son I chose, not the ones I was given. The conversation continued, but Ethan could barely process it. After 12 years of being treated like an unwanted burden, Harrison was planning to leave him everything? Ethan! Victoria's voice cut through his shock. She was standing at the top of the cellar stairs, her face flushed with anger. What's taking so long? Our guests are waiting. Sorry, Ethan mumbled, grabbing the champagne and hurrying upstairs. But his mind was spinning with what he'd overheard. As he delivered the champagne to the catering staff, Ethan caught sight of himself in one of the mansion's many mirrors. He looked like what he was, a man who'd learned to make himself invisible. His dark hair was neat but unremarkable, his clothes expensive but understated, his posture unconsciously deferential after years of being made to feel lesser. But something had changed in his eyes. For the first time in 12 years, Ethan Cross looked like a man with a future. The party continued around him, but Ethan felt detached from it all. He watched Marcus flirt with women who were interested in his trust fund, not his personality. He observed Victoria networking with the cold calculation of a predator. He saw Sophia playing the role of the perfect philanthropist while wearing jewelry that cost more than most people's annual salaries. And he thought about what Harrison had said. About integrity. About heart. About being the son he chose. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the family had retired to their respective wings of the mansion, Ethan sat in his small room, the only bedroom on the ground floor, originally intended for staff, and stared at his laptop screen. For years, he'd been quietly documenting irregularities in the family's business dealings. Not out of malice, but out of a genuine desire to understand and protect the company that had given him a home, even if that home had never truly welcomed him. The evidence was damning. Victoria had been skimming from the Cross Foundation's charity accounts for years, funneling money into offshore accounts. Marcus had been using insider information to make stock trades through shell companies. Even Sophia, sweet Sophia, had been inflating the costs of her charity events and pocketing the difference. Ethan had never planned to use this information. He'd simply collected it out of habit, the way someone might collect stamps or coins. But now, knowing what Harrison planned, knowing that he might soon have the power to do something about it, the weight of that knowledge felt different. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Meet me in my study. We need to talk." Ethan's heart raced. Had Harrison somehow known he was listening? Was he in trouble? He made his way through the dark mansion to Harrison's study, a room he'd only been in a handful of times over the years. Harrison was waiting for him, still in his tuxedo from the party, but looking older and more tired than Ethan had ever seen him. "Sit down, son." The word son hit Ethan like a physical blow. Harrison had never called him that before. "I know you heard Robert and me talking tonight," Harrison said without preamble. "The wine cellar has always been a terrible place to keep secrets. I discovered that when I was your age." Ethan's mouth went dry. "Mr. Cross, I wasn't trying to." "Harrison," the older man corrected gently. "And I know you weren't trying to eavesdrop. But I'm glad you did. It saves me from having to figure out how to tell you." "Tell me what?" Harrison walked to his desk and pulled out a thick folder. "The truth. About why I really adopted you. About who you really are. About what I'm planning to leave you." He handed Ethan the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, and letters that made Ethan's world shift on its axis. "Your father was my business partner," Harrison said quietly. "David Chun. We started Cross Industries together 30 years ago. He was the brilliant engineer, I was the business mind. We were going to change the world." Ethan stared at a photograph of a young Asian man standing next to a young Harrison Cross in front of a small office building. The man had Ethan's eyes, his jawline, his quiet intensity. "David died in a car accident when you were 8, Harrison continued. "Your mother had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier. You went into the foster system before I could find you. I spent years searching, hiring private investigators, following every lead. When I finally found you, you were 16 and had been through 7 different foster homes. You knew who I was when you adopted me? I knew exactly who you were. You're not just my adopted son, Ethan. You're my business partner's son. You're the heir to half of everything I've built, because half of it was your father's to begin with." The room spun around Ethan. Everything he'd believed about his life, about his place in this family, had been a lie. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to earn your place here, not inherit it by default. I wanted to see if you had your father's integrity, his brilliance, his heart. And you do." Harrison's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You're more like David than you know. He would have been so proud of the man you've become." Ethan looked through more documents. His father's original partnership agreement, patents filed in David Chen's name, financial records showing that David had owned 49% of Cross Industries when he died. "The other children don't know? They know I had a business partner who died. They don't know he had a son. They don't know that son is you." Harrison sat down heavily. "They've spent 12 years treating you like an unwanted charity case, never realizing they were tormenting the rightful heir to half their inheritance. What happens now? Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. In my will, I'm leaving you 51% of Cross Industries. Combined with your father's original 49% stake, you'll own the company outright. You'll have the power to do whatever you think is right. And your children will receive trust funds that will keep them comfortable for life, but no real power in the company, unless you choose to give it to them. Ethan thought about 12 years of being ignored, dismissed, treated as less than. He thought about eating in the kitchen while the family dined in the formal dining room. He thought about being excluded from family photos, family vacations, family decisions. But he also thought about what his father might have wanted. What kind of legacy he would want to leave. "There's something else you should know," Harrison said, pulling out another folder. "About what your siblings have been doing with company resources." "I know," Ethan said quietly. "I've been documenting it for years." Harrison's eyebrows rose. "You have? Victoria's embezzlement from the foundation. Marcus's insider trading. Sophia's charity fraud. I have records of all of it. What were you planning to do with that information?" "I don't know. I never thought I'd have the power to do anything about it." Harrison smiled for the first time that night. "You're definitely David's son. He always said the best leaders are the ones who gather information not for personal gain, but because knowledge is responsibility." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of revelation settling between them. "I'm dying, Ethan." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give me 3 to 6 months. Ethan felt the world tilt again. Just when he'd found his real family, he was going to lose it. "That's why I'm telling you all this now. That's why the will needs to be finalized. You're going to inherit everything much sooner than either of us planned." "Does the family know?" "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. You're going to need time to prepare for what's coming." "What's coming?" Harrison's smile was grim. "War. When my children find out what I've left you, when they discover who you really are, they're going to fight. They're going to challenge the will, try to prove you manipulated me, attempt to destroy your reputation. They're going to do everything in their power to take what they believe is rightfully theirs. And what should I do? Whatever you think is right. You'll have the power to be merciful or ruthless, to forgive or to seek justice. But remember, you're not just inheriting a company. You're inheriting the responsibility to protect thousands of employees, to honor your father's legacy, and to decide what the Cross name will mean for the next generation." Ethan looked at the documents spread before him, at the proof of his real identity, at the evidence of his siblings' crimes. The quiet, invisible boy who'd spent 12 years in the shadows was about to become one of the most powerful men in America. "I need time to think." "Of course. But Ethan," Harrison stood up, looking every one of his 72 years. "Whatever you decide, know that I'm proud of you. Know that your father would be proud of you. And know that you've already proven yourself worthy of this legacy just by being the man you are." As Ethan walked back to his room, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the years of mistreatment. Grief for the father he'd never known he'd lost. Fear of the responsibility being placed on his shoulders. And underneath it all, a growing sense of purpose. He wasn't just Ethan Cross, the unwanted adopted son anymore. He was Ethan Chen-Cross, heir to a business empire, son of a brilliant engineer, and soon to be one of the most powerful men in the world. The question was, what was he going to do with that power? Chapter 2, The Diagnosis. 3 weeks after that life-changing conversation, Ethan sat in the sterile waiting room of Mercy General Hospital's oncology wing, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Harrison had asked him to come to this appointment, the first time in 12 years that any member of the Cross family had specifically requested his presence for something important. Dr. Sarah Martinez emerged from the consultation room, her expression grave. Behind her, Harrison walked slowly, his usually commanding presence diminished by the weight of what they'd just discussed. "Mr. Cross," Dr. Martinez addressed Harrison, "I want you to consider telling your family soon. You're going to need support through this, and hiding your condition will only make things harder." Harrison nodded wearily. "I understand, Doctor. Thank you." As they walked to the parking garage, Harrison was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. 2 months, Ethan. Maybe 3 if I'm lucky." The timeline had accelerated. What had been 3 to 6 months was now much shorter. "We need to move faster than I planned," Harrison continued. "I'm going to tell the family about my diagnosis tonight. Tomorrow, we'll meet with Robert Sterling to finalize the will. And then," he paused, looking at Ethan with eyes that held both sadness and determination. "Then you need to be ready for everything to change." That evening, Harrison called a family meeting in the mansion's formal living room. It was the first time Ethan had been invited to sit with the family rather than serve them, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Victoria, Marcus, and Sophia arranged themselves on the expensive furniture with the casual entitlement of people who'd never questioned their place in the world. Ethan sat slightly apart, still feeling like an intruder despite Harrison's invitation. "I've asked you all here because I have something important to tell you," Harrison began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands that Ethan had begun to notice. "I've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors have given me 2 to 3 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia was the first to react, her hand flying to her mouth as tears immediately sprang to her eyes. "Daddy, no. There has to be something they can do. Experimental treatments, clinical trials. I've explored every option, sweetheart. This is the reality we're facing." Marcus leaned forward, his playboy facade cracking to reveal genuine shock. "How long have you known?" 6 weeks. Victoria's reaction was the most telling. While her siblings processed the emotional impact, her mind immediately went to business. "What does this mean for the company? For the succession plan?" "That's something we'll discuss in the coming days," Harrison said carefully. "Right now, I want us to focus on spending time together as a family." His eyes found Ethan's across the room, and there was a weight to that look that the others missed, but Ethan understood perfectly. The clock was ticking. Over the next few days, the mansion took on a different atmosphere. Sophia barely left Harrison's side, as if her presence could somehow slow the progression of his illness. Marcus canceled his social engagements and actually showed up to the office, though his contributions were minimal. Victoria threw herself into work with even more intensity, clearly positioning herself as the natural successor. And Ethan watched it all, knowing what none of them knew, carrying the weight of secrets that would soon explode their world. He also began to see Harrison differently. The man who had seemed so powerful, so in control, was revealed to be someone who had been carrying his own burdens. For decades, the guilt over David Chen's death, the responsibility of raising David's son while keeping his identity secret, the disappointment in his biological children's moral failures. It had all taken its toll. "I should have told you sooner," Harrison said one evening as they sat in his study, going over business documents. "About your father, about who you really are. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was just protecting myself from having to face the truth about my own children." "You gave me a home when I had nothing," Ethan replied. "That's more than most people would have done. I gave you a roof over your head, but I let my children make it feel like a prison. I should have stopped their cruelty years ago." Ethan had been thinking about this a lot lately. "Why didn't you?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "Because I wanted to see who you really were when faced with adversity. I wanted to know if you had your father's strength, his ability to maintain his integrity even when the world was unfair to him." He looked at Ethan with eyes full of regret. "It was a terrible test to put a child through. I'm sorry. It made me stronger. It shouldn't have been necessary. You were just a boy who'd lost everything, and instead of giving you the love and acceptance you deserved, I let you be treated as an outsider in your own home." The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the study door. Victoria entered without waiting for permission, her expression sharp with suspicion. "What's going on in here?" she demanded. "You two have been having a lot of private meetings lately." "We're discussing business matters," Harrison said calmly. "What business matters? I'm the senior vice president. If there are important decisions being made, I should be involved." "Not everything requires your input, Victoria." Her eyes narrowed as she looked between Harrison and Ethan. "This is about the succession plan, isn't it? You're actually considering giving him a role in the company." The contempt in her voice when she said him was unmistakable. Even facing their father's death, Victoria couldn't bring herself to treat Ethan with basic respect. "Ethan has been part of this family for 12 years, Harrison said, his voice taking on a warning tone. "He deserves consideration." "He's not family," Victoria exploded. "He's a charity case you took in out of guilt or pity or whatever misguided impulse drove you to adopt a damaged foster kid. But he's not a cross, and he never will be." Ethan felt the familiar sting of her words, but this time it was different. This time, he knew the truth about who he really was, about his father's role in building the empire Victoria thought belonged to her by birthright. "That's enough," Harrison said, his voice cold with anger. "Ethan is my son, just as much as Marcus is. More so in some ways." "What's that supposed to mean?" It means that Ethan has shown more loyalty, more integrity, and more genuine care for this family's legacy than any of my biological children. Victoria's face flushed red. How dare you compare us to him? We're your real children. We're your blood. We've been here our whole lives while he's been here 12 years playing the grateful orphan. And in those 12 years, what has he done that's so terrible? What has he done to earn your contempt? He doesn't belong here. He's not one of us. You're right, Ethan said quietly, speaking for the first time since Victoria had entered the room. I'm not one of you. Both Harrison and Victoria looked at him in surprise. I would never embezzle money from charity accounts, Ethan continued, his voice steady. I would never use insider information to manipulate stock prices. I would never inflate charity event costs to line my own pockets. Victoria went white. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've stolen over $2 million from the Cross Foundation over the past 3 years. I'm talking about Marcus's shell companies that have made suspiciously well-timed stock trades. I'm talking about Sophia's charity events that somehow cost twice what they should and leave very little money for actual charitable work. You're lying. Ethan pulled out a folder from Harrison's desk, one of many he'd prepared over the years. Bank records, trading documents, invoices and receipts. All of it documented, all of it traceable. Victoria snatched the folder and flipped through it, her face growing paler with each page. How did you get these? I pay attention. I ask questions. I care about protecting this company's reputation and resources. You've been spying on us. I've been doing my job. Someone had to. Harrison watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride in Ethan's courage and integrity, sadness at the confirmation of his biological children's failures. Get out, Victoria said to Ethan, her voice shaking with rage. Get out of this room, get out of this house. You have no right to judge us, no right to investigate us, no right to be here at all. Actually, Harrison said, his voice cutting through Victoria's fury like a blade, he has every right. More right than you know. What's that supposed to mean? Harrison looked at Ethan, a question in his eyes. Ethan nodded slightly. It was time. It means that Ethan isn't just some random foster child I adopted out of charity, Harrison said. It means he's the son of my business partner, David Chen. It means his father owned 49% of this company when he died. It means Ethan has more claim to this empire than any of you. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria stared at Harrison as if he'd spoken in a foreign language. That's impossible, she whispered. David Chen died in a car accident 20 years ago. His son went into foster care before I could find him. I spent years searching for that boy, and when I finally found him, I adopted him and brought him home where he belonged. You're lying. You're making this up to justify giving him something he doesn't deserve. Harrison walked to his safe and pulled out the original partnership documents, David Chen's death certificate and Ethan's birth certificate. He spread them on the desk like evidence in a trial. David Chen was my partner, my friend, and one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever known. Half of everything we built was his vision, his innovation, his sweat and blood. When he died, his share should have gone to his son. Instead, his son disappeared into a broken foster system, while I built an empire on his father's foundation. Victoria picked up the documents with shaking hands, reading them over and over as if repetition might change their contents. This doesn't change anything, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Even if this is true, even if his father was your partner, that doesn't make him qualified to run this company. Doesn't it? Harrison asked. He's spent 12 years learning every aspect of our business. He has degrees in engineering, business, and finance, all earned while living in this house and being treated like a servant. He's identified and documented every instance of financial impropriety committed by my biological children. He's shown more dedication to this company's welfare than any of you. He's been spying on us. He's been protecting the company from you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Victoria looked from Harrison to Ethan and back again, finally understanding the magnitude of what was happening. You're giving it to him, she said, her voice barely a whisper. You're giving him the company. I'm giving the company to the person most qualified to run it. The person who understands its values, its mission, and its responsibilities. The person who has the integrity to lead it into the future. He's nobody. He's nothing. He's my heir, Harrison said with finality. And after I'm gone, he'll be your boss. Victoria's face cycled through a range of emotions, shock, rage, disbelief, and finally cold calculation. Ethan could see her mind working, already planning her next move. "We'll see about that," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "We'll just see about that." She stormed out of the room, leaving Harrison and Ethan alone with the weight of what had just been revealed. "That went better than I expected," Harrison said dryly. "She's going to fight this with everything she has." "I know. They all will. Are you ready for that?" Ethan thought about the question seriously. Was he ready to go to war with the people who'd made his life miserable for 12 years? Was he ready to take control of a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars? Was he ready to honor his father's legacy while dealing with the hatred and resentment of his adoptive siblings? "I don't know if anyone could be ready for this," he said honestly. "But I know what my father would want. I know what you want. And I know what's right. That's all any of us can do. Try to do what's right, even when it's hard." Within an hour, the entire family knew. Ethan could hear raised voices from various parts of the mansion as Victoria shared the news with Marcus and Sophia. Doors slammed. Phones rang. The carefully maintained facade of family unity crumbled in real time. Marcus was the next to confront them, bursting into the study with his usual dramatic flair, but none of his usual charm. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Is he really David Chen's son?" "Yes," Harrison said simply. "And you're really planning to leave him everything?" "The controlling interest, yes." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is insane. You're dying, Dad. You're not thinking clearly. No one's going to accept this. The board won't stand for it. The shareholders will revolt. The board serves at the pleasure of the majority shareholder. The shareholders care about profits, not bloodlines. And Ethan has proven himself more capable of generating both than any of you. He's been here 12 years. I've been here my whole life. And what do you have to show for it? What have you contributed to this company besides your name and your trust fund?" Marcus's face flushed. "I've been learning, preparing. You've been partying and playing while Ethan was studying and working. You've been coasting on your birthright while he was earning his place through merit." "Merit?" Marcus's voice cracked with disbelief. "He's the help. He's been fetching drinks and running errands. He's been learning. Every errand taught him something about our operations. Every task gave him insight into how this company functions. While you were at nightclubs, he was reading financial reports. While you were on vacation, he was studying our competitors. While you were spending money, he was figuring out how to make it." The truth of Harrison's words hit Marcus like physical blows. For the first time in his life, he was being forced to confront the reality of his own inadequacy. "This isn't over," Marcus said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I won't let you destroy our family's legacy by giving it to an outsider. Ethan isn't an outsider. He's more family than any of you have ever been to him." After Marcus left, Sophia appeared in the doorway. Unlike her siblings, she wasn't angry. She was crying. "Is it true, Daddy? About Ethan's father?" "Yes, sweetheart. And you're really going to leave him the company?" "I am." Sophia looked at Ethan with eyes full of tears and something that might have been guilt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for how we treated you. I didn't know. I should have been kinder regardless, but I didn't know who you really were." "You couldn't have known," Ethan said gently. "Harrison kept it secret to protect me." "No," Sophia shook her head. "I should have been kinder because it was the right thing to do. Because you were just a boy who'd lost everything and needed a family. I failed you. We all failed you." Her genuine remorse was more painful than her siblings' anger. Sophia had never been cruel to him the way Victoria and Marcus had, but her passive acceptance of their treatment had been its own form of betrayal. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we prepare for the future," Harrison said. "And we hope that this family can find a way to heal from the damage that's been done." But even as he said the words, they all knew healing would be the hardest part of all. Chapter 3. The Will Reading. Harrison Cross died on a Tuesday morning in October, peacefully in his sleep with Ethan holding his hand. The man who had built an empire, who had carried the weight of so many secrets, who had tried to balance justice with mercy, simply slipped away as the autumn sun streamed through his bedroom windows. The funeral was a spectacle worthy of a head of state. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and dignitaries from around the world came to pay their respects to one of America's most influential men. The service was held at the city's largest cathedral, with overflow crowds watching on screens in the plaza outside. Ethan sat in the front row with the family, wearing a black suit that Harrison had insisted he buy for this day. "You'll need to look the part," Harrison had said during one of their final conversations. "Perception matters in business, and you're about to become one of the most watched men in America." Victoria, Marcus, and Sophia sat beside him, their grief genuine despite the complicated emotions surrounding their father's final decisions. Whatever their flaws, they had loved Harrison, and his death left a void that would never be filled. The media coverage was intense, with reporters speculating about the succession plan and the future of Cross Industries. Most assumed Marcus would inherit the CEO position, with Victoria taking a senior role and Sophia continuing her philanthropic work. Ethan was barely mentioned in the coverage, still invisible even in death as he had been in life. That would change very soon. 3 days after the funeral, the family gathered in the conference room of Sterling, Whitman and Associates for the reading of Harrison's will. Robert Sterling, now in his 70s but still sharp as a blade, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table with a thick folder before him. Victoria, Marcus, and Sophia sat on one side of the table, their expressions ranging from grief to anticipation. Ethan sat alone on the other side, feeling the weight of their collective gaze and the magnitude of what was about to unfold. "Before we begin," Robert said, his voice formal and grave, "I want to acknowledge that this is an unusual situation. Harrison's final wishes may come as a surprise to some of you. I urge you to listen carefully and remember that these decisions were made with great thought and consideration over many months." He opened the folder and began to read. "I, Harrison Cross, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." The legal language was dense and formal, but the substance was clear. Harrison had left generous trust funds to Victoria, Marcus, and Sophia, enough to ensure they would never want for anything, but structured in a way that prevented them from accessing the principal all at once. "To my daughter Victoria Cross, I leave $10 million in trust, to be distributed over 20 years, along with the family home in the Hamptons and my collection of rare books. To my son Marcus Cross, I leave $10 million in trust, to be distributed over 20 years, along with my vintage car collection and my membership in the Riverside Country Club. To my daughter Sophia Cross, I leave $10 million in trust, to be distributed over 20 years, along with my art collection and the family foundation, which she has always managed with such care." The siblings exchanged glances. The amounts were generous, but they were clearly not the main inheritance. The real question was what would happen to Cross Industries itself. Robert paused, looking around the table before continuing. "To my son Ethan Cross, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my 51% controlling interest in Cross Industries, my personal investment portfolio, the family mansion, and all other assets not specifically designated above." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face went white, then red, then white again. Marcus looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Sophia simply stared at Ethan with wide, shocked eyes. "Furthermore," Robert continued, "I hereby name Ethan Cross as Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Cross Industries, effective immediately upon my death. I have full confidence in his ability to lead the company into the future while honoring the values and principles upon which it was built." "This is impossible," Victoria said, her voice barely controlled. "There has to be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Robert replied calmly. "I've reviewed these documents extensively with your father over the past several months. He can't do this." Marcus exploded, jumping to his feet. "You can't just give a company worth $200 billion to someone who isn't even really family." "Actually," Robert said, pulling out another set of documents, "there's something else you need to understand. Something your father wanted you to know." He spread the papers on the table, the same documents Harrison had shown Ethan weeks earlier. David Chen's partnership agreement, his death certificate, Ethan's birth certificate, and the original incorporation papers for Cross Industries. Ethan Cross is the son of David Chen, Harrison's original business partner and co-founder of Cross Industries. When David died 20 years ago, he owned 49% of the company. That ownership should have passed to his son, but Ethan was lost in the foster system before Harrison could locate him. Victoria snatched up the documents, her hands shaking as she read. This can't be real. It's all verified and authenticated," Robert continued. "David Chen was not just Harrison's partner. He was the engineering genius behind most of the company's early innovations. The patents, the designs, the technological breakthroughs that made Cross Industries what it is today, many of them came from David's mind." "So you're saying," Marcus said slowly, "that he's been entitled to half the company this whole time?" "Legally, yes. Harrison could have claimed David's shares when he died, since there was no will and no known heir. Instead, he held them in trust, hoping to someday find David's son and return what was rightfully his. Sophia looked at Ethan with new understanding. That's why Dad adopted you. Not out of charity, but because you were already family. Harrison spent years searching for David's son, Robert explained. When he finally found Ethan in the foster system, he brought him home where he belonged. But he wanted Ethan to prove himself worthy of the inheritance, to earn his place through merit rather than simply claim it by birthright. 12 years, Ethan said quietly, speaking for the first time since the reading began. 12 years of being treated like an outsider in my own father's company. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Victoria, Marcus, and Sophia were forced to confront the reality of how they'd treated the rightful heir to their family's empire. There's more, Robert said, pulling out additional documents. Harrison also wanted you to know about certain irregularities that have been discovered in company accounts. He spread out the evidence Ethan had compiled over the years, bank records, trading documents, invoices, and receipts that painted a clear picture of embezzlement, fraud, and insider trading. Victoria, you've systematically stolen $2.3 million from the Cross Foundation over the past 3 years. Marcus, your shell companies have made suspiciously timed trades that constitute clear insider trading violations. Sophia, your charity events have been inflated by an average of 40%, with the excess funds diverted to your personal accounts. The siblings stared at the evidence in horror, realizing that their crimes had been documented and could be used against them. Harrison chose not to prosecute these crimes during his lifetime, Robert continued, but he wanted the new leadership to be aware of them when making decisions about the future. Victoria found her voice first. This is blackmail. You're trying to silence us with threats of prosecution. No, Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. This is accountability. For 12 years, you've treated me like I didn't belong in this family. You've stolen from the company, violated the trust of our clients and donors, and acted like the rules didn't apply to you because of your last name. Our last name, Marcus shouted. Cross is our name, not yours. Actually, Robert interjected, Harrison legally changed Ethan's name to Ethan Chen-Cross 6 months ago, acknowledging both his adoptive family and his biological heritage. This is insane, Victoria said, standing up and beginning to pace. The board will never accept this. The shareholders will revolt. The media will have a field day. You can't just hand over a Fortune 500 company to someone with no experience running a major corporation. I have 12 years of experience learning every aspect of this business, Ethan replied. I have degrees in engineering, business, and finance. I have a documented track record of identifying problems and protecting company assets. What experience do any of you have that qualifies you more than that? We're family, Marcus insisted. So am I. More than you ever let me feel. Sophia, who had been quiet through most of the exchange, finally spoke up. What do you want from us, Ethan? What happens now? It was the question everyone was thinking but afraid to ask. Ethan now had the power to destroy them all, to prosecute their crimes, to cut them off financially, to exile them from the only life they'd ever known. I want what Harrison wanted, Ethan said after a long moment. I want this company to succeed. I want it to honor the legacy that my father and Harrison built together. I want it to be a force for good in the world, not just a source of wealth for the people who happen to share a name. And us? Victoria asked. What happens to us? Ethan looked at each of them in turn. Victoria with her sharp intelligence and ruthless ambition, Marcus with his charm and fundamental weakness, Sophia with her genuine kindness undermined by moral cowardice. That depends on you, he said finally. You can accept the new reality and find ways to contribute positively to the company's future. You can use your trust funds to build meaningful lives and maybe even earn back some of the respect you've lost. Or you can fight this, challenge the will, try to destroy me and the company in the process. And if we choose to fight, Victoria asked, then I'll use every legal tool at my disposal to protect the company and its stakeholders, including prosecuting the crimes you've committed. The threat hung in the air like a sword. Victoria's face cycled through a range of emotions before settling on cold calculation. You think you've won, she said. You think having Dad's will and some old documents makes you untouchable. But you have no idea what you're up against. This company has enemies, competitors who would love to see it fail. The board has members who will never accept an outsider as CEO. The media will tear you apart the moment they smell weakness. Maybe, Ethan acknowledged. But I'll face those challenges with integrity, which is more than you can say. Integrity doesn't run a company. Power does. Connections do. Experience does. And you have none of those things. I have something better. I have the trust of the man who built this empire. I have the legal right to lead it. And I have the determination to honor both my father's legacies. Robert Sterling cleared his throat. If there are no further questions about the will itself, I suggest we adjourn. There are practical matters to attend to, board meetings to schedule, press releases to prepare, transition plans to implement. As the family filed out of the conference room, Ethan remained seated, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just occurred. In the span of an hour, he had gone from being the invisible adopted son to being one of the most powerful men in America. Sophia lingered behind, approaching Ethan hesitantly. I know this doesn't change anything, she said softly, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. For how we treated you, for not standing up for you, for making you feel like you didn't belong. Thank you, Ethan said, and meant it. That means more than you know. What you said in there, about us finding ways to contribute positively, did you mean that? Or was it just something you said to sound magnanimous? Ethan studied her face, seeing genuine remorse and perhaps the beginning of real change. I meant it, but it has to be real, Sophia. No more charity fraud, no more treating the foundation like your personal expense account. If you want to be part of this company's future, you have to earn it. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. And Ethan, for what it's worth, I think Dad made the right choice. You're going to be a better leader than any of us would have been. After she left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the documents that had changed his life forever. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the city skyline, including the gleaming Cross Industries tower that was now his responsibility. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your inheritance. We should meet soon to discuss the future. A friend. Ethan stared at the message, a chill running down his spine. Victoria had been right about one thing. He had no idea what he was up against. The will reading was just the beginning. The real battle for control of Cross Industries was about to begin. But as he looked out at the city his father had helped build, Ethan felt a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. He wasn't just inheriting a company. He was inheriting a responsibility to honor two men's legacies and to prove that integrity and merit mattered more than bloodlines and birthright. The invisible son was invisible no more. Now the world would see what Ethan Chen-Cross was truly capable of. Chapter 4. The First Day. The Cross Industries headquarters occupied 47 floors of gleaming steel and glass in the heart of the financial district. Ethan had been in the building countless times over the years, usually to deliver documents or attend meetings as Harrison's assistant. But walking through the marble lobby at 7 a.m. on his first day as CEO felt like entering an entirely different world. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when Ethan approached. Mr. Cross? Mr. Chen-Cross? Sir. The man stumbled over the name, clearly unsure of the protocol. Just Ethan is fine, James, Ethan said, reading the man's name tag. How long have you worked here? 15 years, sir. Since my daughter was born. Mr. Harrison, your father, he helped me get this job when I was down on my luck. He was good at seeing potential in people, Ethan said, thinking of his own story. I hope you'll give me the same chance to prove myself. James smiled, some of his nervousness fading. Yes, sir. The executive elevator is ready for you. As Ethan rode up to the 47th floor, he thought about the conversation he'd had with Robert Sterling the night before. The lawyer had briefed him on the immediate challenges he would face. A board meeting scheduled for that afternoon, a hostile takeover attempt by a competitor that had been brewing for months, and the inevitable media scrutiny that would follow the announcement of his appointment. The board is going to test you, Robert had warned. Some of them are loyal to Harrison's memory and will give you a chance. Others see you as an inexperienced outsider who inherited something he didn't earn. You'll need to prove yourself quickly. The executive floor was a study in understated luxury, thick carpets, original artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the city. Ethan's new office was at the end of the hall, the same office where Harrison had spent the last 30 years building an empire. Margaret Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, had been Harrison's executive assistant for over 2 decades. She was waiting for him with a cup of coffee and a stack of briefing materials. "Good morning, Mr. Chen-Cross," she said with professional warmth. "I've prepared your schedule for the day and highlighted the most urgent matters requiring your attention." "Thank you, Margaret. And please call me Ethan. We're going to be working closely together, and I value informality when it helps build trust." She smiled, clearly approving of his approach. "Your first meeting is with the senior leadership team at 8:30. They're eager to meet you." Ethan could hear the diplomatic understatement in her voice. The senior leadership team was probably more anxious than eager, wondering what changes the new CEO might bring. He spent the next hour reviewing the briefing materials, familiarizing himself with the current state of the company's various divisions. Cross Industries had grown far beyond its original technology focus, with subsidiaries in renewable energy, biotechnology, aerospace, and financial services. The scope of his new responsibilities was staggering. At 8:30 sharp, Ethan walked into the executive conference room where 12 of the company's most senior leaders were waiting. The conversation stopped abruptly when he entered, and he could feel their collective assessment as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Good morning, everyone," Ethan began. "I know this transition has been unexpected, and I'm sure you have questions about my plans for the company. I want to start by saying that I have enormous respect for the work you've all done and the loyalty you've shown to Harrison and to Cross Industries." Dr. Sarah Kim, the Chief Technology Officer, spoke first. "Mr. Chen-Cross, we're all curious about your background. Your resume shows impressive academic credentials, but you don't have traditional executive experience." "That's true," Ethan acknowledged. "But I've spent 12 years learning this business from the ground up. I've worked in every division, studied every aspect of our operations, and developed relationships with employees at every level. I may not have a traditional path to this office, but I have a deep understanding of what makes this company successful." "Understanding and leading are different things," said Michael Torres, the Chief Financial Officer. "This company employs over 200,000 people worldwide. Our decisions affect millions of shareholders, customers, and communities. The learning curve for a new CEO is steep under the best circumstances." "You're absolutely right," Ethan said. "That's why I'm not planning to make dramatic changes immediately. I want to listen, to learn from your expertise, and to build on the strong foundation Harrison created. But I also want to address some issues that have been overlooked." He pulled out a folder containing the financial irregularities he'd documented over the years. Not the personal crimes of his siblings, but broader systemic issues within the company. "We have cost overruns in the aerospace division that suggest either poor project management or potential fraud. We have environmental compliance issues in 3 of our manufacturing facilities that could result in significant fines. We have a pattern of employee complaints about workplace harassment that our HR department has been slow to address." The room grew quiet as Ethan laid out problem after problem, each one documented with precise detail and supporting evidence. "How long have you been tracking these issues?" asked Jennifer Walsh, the Chief Operating Officer. "Years. I've been compiling this information because I care about this company's reputation and long-term success. These aren't insurmountable problems, but they require attention and resources to fix." Dr. Kim leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "You've been doing this work without being asked, without being paid for it, just because you thought it was important. I've been doing it because this company gave me a home when I had nothing. Because Harrison trusted me with access to information, and I felt responsible for using it wisely. Because I believe Cross Industries can be a force for good in the world, but only if we hold ourselves to the highest standards." The mood in the room began to shift. These were serious professionals who had dedicated their careers to the company's success, and they could recognize genuine commitment when they saw it. "What's your vision for the company's future?" asked David Park, the head of the renewable energy division. "I want us to be the company that proves you can be profitable and principled at the same time. I want us to lead in innovation while treating our employees with respect and dignity. I want us to grow our market share while reducing our environmental impact. I want us to honor the legacy Harrison and my father built while adapting to the challenges of the 21st century." "Your father?" Michael Torres asked, confused. Ethan realized that most of the leadership team didn't know about his true parentage. He briefly explained about David Chen's role as co-founder and his own identity as David's son. "So you're not just Harrison's adopted son," Jennifer Walsh said slowly. "You're the biological son of the company's co-founder." "Yes. But I don't want to lead this company because of who my father was. I want to lead it because of who I am and what I can contribute. The meeting continued for another hour, with Ethan fielding questions about his plans for each division, his thoughts on the pending takeover attempt, and his approach to managing the media attention that would inevitably follow his appointment. By the end, the atmosphere had changed completely. The senior leadership team wasn't just accepting his authority, they were beginning to respect it. After the meeting, Dr. Kim approached him privately. "I worked with your father," she said quietly. "David Chen was one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever known, but more than that, he was a good man. He cared about the people who worked for him, and he never forgot that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. I wish I could have known him. You're more like him than you probably realize. The way you've been quietly documenting problems and looking for solutions. That's exactly what David would have done. He believed that leadership meant taking responsibility for things even when no one was watching." Her words meant more to Ethan than she could know. For 12 years, he'd felt like an outsider trying to prove he belonged. Now, for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and briefings. Ethan met with the heads of each major division, reviewed quarterly financial reports, and began preparing for the board meeting that afternoon. At noon, Margaret brought him lunch and the morning's newspapers. The business press had gotten wind of Harrison's will, and the headlines were brutal. "Mystery Heir inherits Cross Empire. Who is Ethan Chen-Cross? Cross Industries stock. Plummets on succession uncertainty." The articles were filled with speculation about Ethan's qualifications, questions about the legitimacy of his inheritance, and dire predictions about the company's future under inexperienced leadership. Several quoted anonymous sources within the company expressing concern about the transition. "Don't let it get to you," Margaret advised, seeing his expression as he read. "The media always assumes the worst when there's change at the top. Your job is to prove them wrong." At 2 p.m., Ethan walked into the boardroom for his first meeting as CEO. The Cross Industries board consisted of 12 members, a mix of industry veterans, former government officials, and representatives of major institutional investors. Harrison had chosen them carefully over the years, but Ethan knew that loyalty to a dead man only went so far. Board Chairman William Hartwell, a distinguished man in his 60s who had served on the board for 15 years, called the meeting to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to formally acknowledge the transition of leadership at Cross Industries following the tragic death of Harrison Cross. As you know, Harrison's will named his adopted son, Ethan Chen-Cross, as his successor." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Ethan could feel the skeptical gazes of the board members as they assessed him. "Mr. Chen-Cross," Hartwell continued, "the board has some concerns about this transition that we'd like to discuss with you directly." "I welcome your questions," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. Board member Patricia Vance, a former Treasury Secretary, spoke first. "Mr. Chen-Cross, you're 28 years old with no prior CEO experience. Cross Industries is a Fortune 50 company with global operations and enormous complexity. What makes you think you're qualified to lead an organization of this magnitude?" "I don't think I'm qualified because of my age or my resume," Ethan answered. "I think I'm qualified because I've spent 12 years learning this business from every angle. I've worked in our factories, our labs, our offices. I've studied our competitors, our markets, our challenges. I've identified problems that others have missed and developed solutions that others haven't considered." "That's all well and good," said board member Robert Chin, again no relation. "But there's a difference between understanding a business and running it. Leadership requires making tough decisions that affect thousands of people and billions of dollars. How do we know you won't crack under that pressure?" "You don't," Ethan admitted. "But you also don't know that I will. What you do know is that Harrison Cross, one of the most successful business leaders of his generation, chose me as his successor after observing my work for 12 years. He didn't make that decision lightly." Board member James Morrison, representing one of the company's largest institutional investors, leaned forward. "Mr. Chen-Cross, our shareholders are concerned about the stock price decline following news of your appointment. How do you plan to restore confidence in the company's leadership?" "By delivering results," Ethan said simply. "By addressing the operational issues that have been ignored, by pursuing growth opportunities that align with our values, and by proving that this company can thrive under principled leadership." "What operational issues?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a former university president who served on the board's governance committee. Ethan pulled out his comprehensive analysis of the company's problems, the same information he'd shared with the senior leadership team that morning. For the next 30 minutes, he walked the board through each issue, explaining not just what was wrong but what needed to be done to fix it. The board members exchanged glances as Ethan spoke. This wasn't the unprepared young man they'd expected to meet. This was someone who had clearly been thinking deeply about the company's challenges and opportunities. "This is impressive work," admitted Patricia Vance. "But identifying problems is easier than solving them. What's your plan for actually implementing these changes?" "I've already begun," Ethan said. "This morning, I met with the senior leadership team and assigned specific responsibilities for addressing each issue. We're forming task forces to tackle the most urgent problems, and I'm personally overseeing the development of new policies to prevent similar issues in the future." "And what about the Meridian Industries takeover attempt?" asked William Hartwell. "They've been circling us for months, and Harrison's death has given them an opening to argue that the company lacks stable leadership." Ethan had been dreading this question. Meridian Industries was an aggressive competitor that had been trying to acquire Cross Industries for years. Their latest offer was for $180 billion, less than the company's true value, but potentially attractive to shareholders worried about the leadership transition. "Meridian's offer undervalues our company by at least 20%, Ethan said. "They're betting that uncertainty about the succession will make our shareholders willing to accept less than what Cross Industries is really worth. My job is to prove them wrong by demonstrating strong, stable leadership and delivering the kind of results that make their offer look inadequate. And if you can't," Morrison pressed, "if the stock continues to decline and shareholders lose confidence, then the board will have to make the decision that's best for the company and its stakeholders. But I'm asking for the chance to prove myself before we consider selling the legacy that Harrison and my father built." The mention of his father seemed to resonate with several board members. William Hartwell had known David Chen personally and had always regretted his early death. "Tell us about your father," Hartwell said. "About David Chen's vision for this company." Ethan spoke about what he'd learned from Harrison and from studying his father's old notes and patents. David Chen had believed that technology should solve real problems and improve people's lives. He'd been passionate about environmental sustainability decades before it became fashionable. He'd insisted that a company's success should be measured not just in profits, but in its positive impact on society. "Those values are still relevant today," Ethan concluded. "Maybe more relevant than ever. Consumers want to do business with companies they can trust. Employees want to work for organizations that share their values. Investors are increasingly focused on long-term sustainability rather than short-term gains. Cross Industries can lead in all of these areas, but only if we have the courage to prioritize principles alongside profits." The board meeting continued for another hour, with members grilling Ethan on everything from his plans for international expansion to his thoughts on executive compensation. By the end, the atmosphere had shifted from skeptical to cautiously optimistic. "Mr. Chen-Cross," William Hartwell said as the meeting concluded, "the board has decided to give you our provisional support. We'll evaluate your performance over the next 6 months and make a final determination about your leadership at that time." "I understand," Ethan replied, "and I appreciate the opportunity to prove myself." As the board members filed out, several approached Ethan individually to offer encouragement or advice. Patricia Vance was the last to leave. "You did well today," she said. "But the real test isn't in this boardroom. It's out there in the markets with the employees in the media. You're going to face challenges that would break most people. The question is whether you have the strength to persevere when everything seems to be falling apart." "I guess we'll find out," Ethan said. "Yes," she smiled grimly. "We will." After the board meeting, Ethan returned to his office to find Margaret waiting with a stack of phone messages and a concerned expression. "The media requests are pouring in," she said. "Everyone wants an interview with the new CEO. And there's something else, your siblings have been calling. Victoria wants to schedule a meeting, Marcus is demanding to speak with you immediately, and Sophia has been trying to reach you all day." Ethan looked at the messages, feeling the weight of family drama on top of everything else he was dealing with. "Schedule the meeting with Victoria for tomorrow morning," he said. "Tell Marcus I'll call him tonight. And put Sophia through if she calls again. She's the only one who's shown any genuine remorse for how things have been." "There's one more thing," Margaret said hesitantly. Security found this on your car in the parking garage. She handed him a note written on expensive stationery. Enjoy your moment in the sun. It won't last long. A concerned shareholder. Ethan stared at the note, feeling a chill run down his spine. The anonymous text from the day before, now this. Someone was watching him, someone who wanted him to fail. Should we call the police? Margaret asked. Not yet, but increase security around the building and have them monitor the parking garage more closely. And Margaret, don't mention this to anyone else for now. As the sun set over the city, Ethan stood in his office looking out at the lights beginning to twinkle in the buildings below. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably plotting her next move. Marcus was likely drowning his sorrows and his wounded pride. Sophia was perhaps genuinely trying to figure out how to make amends. And somewhere, an unknown enemy was planning his downfall. But for the first time in his life, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The invisible sun had stepped into the light, and he was ready for whatever came next. The real battle for Cross Industries was just beginning. Chapter 5: Family War. Victoria Cross had always been beautiful, but sitting across from Ethan in the executive conference room the next morning, her beauty had taken on a sharp, dangerous edge. She wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a style that emphasized the cold calculation in her blue eyes. You look comfortable, she said, glancing around the conference room that had once been her second home. Sitting in Daddy's chair, playing CEO. How does it feel to finally get what you've always wanted? I never wanted this, Ethan replied honestly. I wanted a family. I wanted to belong somewhere. The company was never the goal. Please. You've been scheming for this since the day you arrived. The quiet, grateful orphan act was just a cover while you wormed your way into Dad's affections and turned him against his real children. Is that what you really believe? That I manipulated Harrison for 12 years just to inherit his company? I believe you're very good at playing the victim while positioning yourself as the hero. But I know who you really are, Ethan. You're a survivor, and survivors do whatever it takes to get what they want. There was something almost admiring in her tone, as if she recognized a kindred spirit despite her hatred. What do you want, Victoria? I want what's mine. What should have been mine from the beginning. She leaned forward, her voice taking on the persuasive tone that had made her so successful in business. You're in over your head, Ethan. You have no idea what you're up against. The board is only supporting you provisionally. The media is circling like sharks. Our competitors smell weakness. And you have enemies you don't even know about yet. Enemies like you? I'm not your enemy. I'm your reality check. You can't run this company alone, and you can't do it without the Cross family's support. You need us, whether you want to admit it or not. What are you proposing? Victoria smiled, and it was like watching a predator reveal its teeth. A partnership. You keep the CEO title and the controlling shares. I can't change that, much as I'd like to. But you make me president and COO, with real authority over day-to-day operations. Marcus gets a senior VP position in business development, where his charm can actually be useful. Sophia continues running the foundation, but with proper oversight. And in return, we present a united front to the world. We stop the family infighting that's making the company look unstable. We use our connections, our experience, our knowledge of how this business really works to help you succeed. And if I refuse? Victoria's smile widened. Then we go to war. I challenged the will in court, claiming Dad was mentally incompetent when he wrote it. I leak information about your lack of qualifications to every business journalist in the country. I use my connections on the board to undermine your authority at every turn. I make your life so miserable that you'll beg me to take the company off your hands. You destroy Cross Industries just to hurt me? I'd save Cross Industries from an inexperienced pretender who's going to run it into the ground through incompetence and idealism. Ethan studied her face, seeing the intelligence and ruthlessness that had made her so formidable in business. She wasn't bluffing. She had the resources and the connections to make his life hell if she chose to. There's a third option, he said quietly. Which is, I release the evidence of your embezzlement to the authorities and let you explain to a federal prosecutor why you stole $2.3 million from a charity. Victoria's composure cracked for just a moment, revealing the fear underneath her confident facade. You wouldn't dare. The scandal would hurt the company's reputation. Maybe, but it would also send a clear message that the new leadership won't tolerate corruption, regardless of who's involved. I'm your sister. No, you're not. You've made that very clear over the past 12 years. You're Harrison's daughter, and I'll always respect that relationship. But you're not my sister, and you're not my family. Family doesn't steal from charities. Family doesn't threaten and manipulate. Family doesn't spend 12 years making someone feel unwanted and unwelcome. Victoria's mask slipped completely, revealing the rage and desperation underneath. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? You think your tragic orphan story gives you some kind of moral authority. I think my actions speak for themselves. Just like yours do. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. Victoria stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly with anger. You have no idea what you've just started. By the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd stayed invisible. After she left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room, feeling the weight of the war that had just been declared. Victoria wasn't just angry, she was dangerous. She had connections throughout the business world, relationships with board members and major shareholders, and the kind of ruthless intelligence that could turn his strengths into weaknesses. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. We need to talk. Tonight. Riverside Country Club, 8 p.m. Come alone. Ethan stared at the message, wondering if this was another confrontation or perhaps an attempt at reconciliation. With Marcus, it was always hard to tell. The rest of the day was consumed with the urgent business of running a Fortune 50 company. Ethan met with the heads of the aerospace and renewable energy divisions, reviewed proposals for new research and development initiatives, and participated in a conference call with the company's European operations. Each meeting reinforced how much he still had to learn, but also how much his 12 years of observation and study had prepared him. He understood the technical aspects of the company's products, the competitive landscape, and the regulatory challenges they faced. What he lacked was the political savvy to navigate the complex relationships between different stakeholders. At 7:45 p.m., Ethan arrived at the Riverside Country Club, an exclusive establishment where Harrison had been a member for over 20 years. The club was old money personified, leather chairs, oil paintings of long-dead industrialists, and an atmosphere of quiet privilege that made it clear who belonged and who didn't. Marcus was waiting in the club's library, nursing a whiskey and looking uncharacteristically serious. At 32, he was still devastatingly handsome, but there were new lines around his eyes and a tension in his posture that suggested the past week had taken its toll. You came, Marcus said, sounding genuinely surprised. You're Harrison's son. That means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to you. Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Please. We need to talk. Ethan sat down, noting that Marcus had already ordered him a drink. Scotch, neat, the same thing Harrison used to drink. Victoria came to see you today, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. She made her position very clear. She's going to destroy you, you know. She's already started making calls, reaching out to board members, planting seeds of doubt about your competence. She's very good at this kind of warfare. And you? Are you here to threaten me too? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm here to warn you. And to apologize. Apologize? For 12 years of treating you like shit. For never standing up to Victoria when she was cruel to you. For being so wrapped up in my own privileged bubble that I never bothered to see who you really were. The admission caught Ethan off guard. He'd expected another confrontation, not genuine remorse. Why now? Because Dad's dead, and I finally understand what he was trying to teach us. Because I've spent the last week thinking about what kind of man I want to be, and I don't like the answer. Because you're the only family I have left who's worth a damn. Marcus took a long sip of his whiskey before continuing. I know what Victoria's planning. She's going to challenge the will, claim Dad was mentally incompetent. She's going to dig up every mistake you've ever made and use it against you. She's going to turn this into a public spectacle that will damage the company and destroy our family's reputation. Can she win? Maybe. She's smart, she's connected, and she's absolutely ruthless when she wants something. But she's also desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice even though they were alone in the library. She's been in contact with Meridian Industries. I overheard a phone call yesterday. She's feeding them information about the company's vulnerabilities, helping them time their takeover bid for maximum impact. Ethan felt his blood run cold. She's working with our competitors? She's working with anyone who can help her get what she wants. In her mind, if she can't have the company, she'd rather see it sold than let you keep it. That's treason. Corporate espionage. That's Victoria. She's always believed that the ends justify the means, no matter how destructive those means might be. Ethan stared into his untouched scotch, processing this information. Victoria wasn't just fighting him. She was actively sabotaging the company to serve her own interests. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything, I love this company. Dad built something incredible, and I don't want to see it destroyed because my sister can't accept that she wasn't chosen to lead it. Marcus paused. And because I think Dad was right about you. Right about what? That you're the best person to lead Cross Industries into the future. You have something, Victoria, and I never developed: integrity. You care more about doing the right thing than about winning, and that's exactly what this company needs. But, Marcus smiled grimly, but integrity alone won't be enough. You need allies, and you need to understand how the game is really played. Victoria has spent years building relationships with board members, major shareholders, and business journalists. She knows where all the bodies are buried, and she's not afraid to dig them up if it serves her purposes. What do you suggest? Fight fire with fire. Use the evidence you have about her embezzlement. Expose her relationship with Meridian. Show the board and the shareholders that she's the real threat to the company's stability. That would destroy her. She's trying to destroy you. And more importantly, she's trying to destroy everything Dad built. Sometimes you have to choose between being nice and being effective. Ethan thought about Harrison's final words to him, about the responsibility he now carried to protect the company and its employees. Could he really let Victoria's vendetta put thousands of jobs at risk? There's something else, Marcus continued. Something you need to know about the board meeting yesterday. What about it? 3 of the board members, Morrison, Chen, and Vance, they met with Victoria after your presentation. She's been working on them for weeks, questioning your qualifications, suggesting that the company needs experienced leadership during this transition. How do you know this? Because Morrison is my godfather. He's known me since I was a child, and he still thinks of me as the rightful heir. He told me about the meeting because he wanted my opinion on whether Victoria would be a better choice as CEO. And what did you tell him? I told him that Victoria would be a disaster, that she's brilliant but completely amoral, that she'd sacrifice the company's values for short-term profits, that she'd turn Cross Industries into everything Dad fought against. Did he believe you? I think so. But Morrison represents our largest institutional investor, and they're getting nervous about the stock price decline. If Victoria can convince them that she's the safer choice, they might pressure the board to remove you. Ethan felt the walls closing in around him. Victoria was attacking from multiple directions. Legal challenges to the will, media campaigns against his competence, board members questioning his authority, and now corporate espionage with their biggest competitor. What about you? Ethan asked. What do you want out of all this? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his drink. I want to matter. For the first time in my life, I want to contribute something meaningful instead of just coasting on my name and my trust fund. Victoria offered you a senior VP position if you support her. She did. And 6 months ago, I probably would have taken it. But watching Dad die, seeing how disappointed he was in the people we'd become, it changed something in me. So what are you proposing? Let me help you. I know I don't have your work ethic or your integrity, but I have something you need: connections. I know these people, I understand how they think, and I can help you navigate the political side of this business. In exchange for what? A chance to prove that I'm more than just a pretty face and a trust fund. Give me a real job with real responsibilities, and I'll help you fight Victoria and anyone else who tries to take down this company. Ethan studied Marcus's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. But what he saw was something he'd never seen before: genuine humility and a desire to earn respect rather than simply inherit it. What about Sophia? Sophia's genuinely sorry about how we treated you, but she's also terrified of Victoria. She'll stay neutral as long as possible, but if forced to choose, she'll probably side with family over principle. Even if that family is destroying everything Harrison built, Sophia's not as strong as she pretends to be. She's spent her whole life avoiding conflict, and she's not going to start fighting now, even for the right reasons. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of family loyalty and betrayal hanging between them. If I agree to work with you, Ethan said finally, I need to know that you're committed to doing this the right way. No shortcuts, no dirty tricks, no compromising our values to win. I understand. And I need to know that you're prepared for Victoria to turn on you completely. She won't forgive you for choosing me over her. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine rather than calculated. She turned on me the moment she decided to work with Meridian. Family loyalty only goes so far, and corporate treason crosses the line. Then we have a deal. But Marcus, Ethan's voice took on a warning tone. If you betray me, if you're playing some deeper game that I don't see, I will destroy you just as thoroughly as I'm going to destroy Victoria. The evidence I have about your insider trading is just as damning as what I have on her. I know, and I deserve whatever consequences come from my past mistakes. But I'm asking for a chance to make things right, to honor Dad's memory by helping you succeed. They shook hands across the table, sealing an alliance that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. So what's our first move? Marcus asked. We expose Victoria's relationship with Meridian. If the board finds out she's been feeding information to our competitors, it will destroy her credibility and probably result in criminal charges. That's a nuclear option. Once we do that, there's no going back. There's already no going back. Victoria made that choice when she decided to betray the company for her own gain. Marcus nodded grimly. Then let's go to war. As they left the country club together, Ethan felt a strange sense of completion. For 12 years, he'd been the outsider looking in, watching the Cross family from a distance. Now he was at the center of their civil war, fighting for the soul of the company that bore their name. But he wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The next morning, Ethan called an emergency board meeting. He'd spent the night preparing his presentation, gathering evidence, and steeling himself for what was about to become a very public battle. Victoria arrived at the boardroom looking confident and composed, clearly expecting another routine discussion about the company's transition. Her expression changed when she saw Marcus sitting next to Ethan instead of across from him. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan began, I've called this meeting because I've discovered information that threatens the security and integrity of Cross Industries. Information that requires immediate action from this board. He activated the presentation screen and began laying out the evidence of Victoria's communications with Meridian Industries, her sharing of confidential company information, and her coordination with their takeover efforts. The board members sat in stunned silence as email after email, phone record after phone record, painted a picture of systematic corporate espionage. This is fabricated, Victoria said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. These documents could easily be faked. The emails were recovered from your company laptop by our IT security team, Ethan replied. The phone records are from the telecommunications company. The meeting logs are from Meridian's own internal systems, which we accessed through our cybersecurity investigation. Board Chairman William Hartwell looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Victoria, is this true? Have you been sharing confidential information with Meridian Industries? I've been exploring options for the company's future, Victoria said, her composure finally cracking. Someone has to think about what's best for our shareholders. By helping our competitors plan a hostile takeover? Patricia Vance's voice was ice cold. By betraying the company your father spent his life building? My father made a mistake. Victoria exploded, her mask finally falling away completely. He gave control of this company to someone who has no business running it. I was trying to save Cross Industries from inevitable failure under inexperienced leadership. By destroying it, Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice heavy with disappointment. Victoria, what you've done isn't just wrong, it's criminal. Corporate espionage, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to defraud shareholders. You could go to prison for this. Don't you dare lecture me about loyalty. Victoria turned on her brother with fury. You've been a useless playboy your entire life, and now you're betraying your own sister for someone who isn't even really family. He's more family than you've ever been, Marcus replied quietly. Family doesn't destroy each other for personal gain. The board voted unanimously to remove Victoria from all company positions and to refer the matter to federal authorities for criminal investigation. As security escorted her from the building, she turned back to Ethan with eyes full of hatred. This isn't over, she said. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. I'll see you destroyed if it's the last thing I do. As the boardroom emptied, Ethan sat alone with the weight of what had just happened. He'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Victoria was still out there, still dangerous, still determined to bring him down. But for the first time since inheriting the company, Ethan felt like he might actually be able to protect it. He had allies now, people who believed in his vision and were willing to fight for it. The invisible son had found his voice, and he was ready to use it. Chapter 6: The Counterattack. The news of Victoria Cross's removal from the company broke like a thunderclap across the business world. Within hours, every major financial news outlet was running stories about corporate espionage, family betrayal, and the dramatic power struggle at one of America's largest corporations. Ethan watched the coverage from his office, feeling a mixture of vindication and sadness. Victoria had brought this on herself, but she was still Harrison's daughter, still part of the family that had given him a home when he had nothing. The stock price is up 12%, Margaret reported, bringing him the latest market updates. Investors seemed to view Victoria's removal as a positive sign for the company's stability. And the Meridian takeover bid? Withdrawn as of an hour ago. Apparently, they're concerned about the legal implications of their relationship with Victoria. Ethan nodded, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders. The immediate crisis was over, but he knew Victoria wouldn't give up easily. She was too proud, too angry, and too convinced of her own righteousness to simply accept defeat. His phone rang. It was Sophia, calling from the Family Foundation's offices. "Ethan, I just saw the news. Is it true? Did Victoria really?" "I'm afraid so. The evidence was overwhelming. I can't believe it. I mean, I know Victoria can be ruthless, but working with our competitors? Betraying Dad's company. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I know this is hard for you." "It's not hard for me," Sophia said, her voice stronger than Ethan had ever heard it. "It's clarifying. For years, I've made excuses for Victoria's behavior, told myself that her ambition was just another form of caring about the family business. But this is unforgivable. What will you do? What I should have done years ago. I'm going to stand up for what's right. The Foundation is issuing a statement today supporting your leadership and condemning Victoria's actions. And Ethan, I want you to know that I'm proud to call you my brother. Really proud." After Sophia hung up, Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since Harrison's death, he felt like he might actually have a family worth fighting for. That feeling lasted exactly 3 hours. At 4 p.m., Margaret burst into his office without knocking, her face pale with shock. "Sir, you need to see this. Channel 7 is running a breaking news story." She turned on the television, and Ethan's blood ran cold as he saw Victoria standing in front of a bank of microphones, looking perfectly composed and utterly convincing. "Forced to speak out about the tragic situation at Cross Industries," she was saying. "My adoptive brother, Ethan Chen-Cross, is a deeply troubled young man who has been manipulating our family for years. The so-called evidence against me was fabricated as part of his systematic campaign to destroy anyone who questions his fitness to lead." The reporter pressed her for details, and Victoria's performance was masterful. "Ethan has been obsessed with gaining control of the company since the day he arrived in our home. He's used his position as my father's assistant to gather information about family members, to document private conversations, and to build files that he could use as weapons against us. What happened to me today is just the beginning. He'll come for anyone who threatens his power." "Are you saying that Mr. Chen-Cross forged evidence against you?" "I'm saying that a man who spent 12 years pretending to be grateful while secretly plotting against his own family is capable of anything. The emails, the phone records, the meeting logs, all of it can be fabricated by someone with the right technical skills and the wrong moral compass." "What about your brother Marcus's support for Mr. Chen-Cross?" Victoria's smile was sad and knowing. "Marcus is a good man, but he's also naive. Ethan has convinced him that supporting this coup is somehow noble, that betraying his own sister is an act of integrity. It's heartbreaking to watch someone you love be manipulated so completely." The interview continued for another 10 minutes, with Victoria painting herself as the victim of an elaborate conspiracy orchestrated by an unstable adoptive son who had fooled everyone, including their dying father. "She's good," Marcus said, appearing in the doorway as the interview ended. "I'll give her that. She's managed to turn herself from corporate traitor into sympathetic victim in less than 24 hours. Will people believe her? Some will. She's always been persuasive, and the story she's telling plays into people's existing suspicions about you. The unknown heir, the outsider who suddenly inherits everything. It's easy to cast you as the villain in that narrative." Ethan's phone started ringing immediately. Reporters wanting his response to Victoria's allegations, board members seeking clarification, business partners expressing concern about the company's stability. "We need to respond," Margaret said. "And we need to do it quickly, before her version of events becomes the accepted truth." "What do you suggest?" "A press conference. Tomorrow morning. You tell your side of the story, present the evidence, and let the facts speak for themselves. Victoria's already claimed the evidence is fabricated. How do we prove it's real?" Marcus stepped forward. "We bring in independent experts. Forensic accountants, cybersecurity specialists, telecommunications analysts. We have them verify every piece of evidence in front of the media. We make it impossible for anyone to claim the documentation is fake." "That could take weeks." "We don't have weeks," Margaret said. "The board is meeting again on Friday to discuss the situation. If Victoria's narrative gains traction, they might start questioning their decision to support you." Ethan felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. Move too fast and he'd look desperate. Move too slowly, and Victoria's lies might become accepted truth. "Schedule the press conference for tomorrow at 10 a.m., he decided. "And get me the best forensic experts money can buy. If Victoria wants to play this game in public, we'll give the public all the facts they need to make an informed decision." The next morning, the Cross Industries headquarters was surrounded by news vans and reporters. The press conference was being carried live by every major business network, and the company's stock price fluctuated with each new development. Ethan stood at the podium in the building's main conference room, flanked by Marcus and 3 independent experts who had spent the night verifying the evidence against Victoria. The room was packed with journalists, cameras, and the kind of electric tension that comes with high-stakes corporate drama. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, "I'm here today to address the false allegations made by Victoria Cross regarding her removal from Cross Industries. These allegations are not just wrong, they're a desperate attempt to deflect attention from her own criminal behavior." He gestured to the experts beside him. "Dr. Jennifer Walsh is a forensic digital analyst from MIT. Mr. Robert Kim is a telecommunications specialist who has testified in federal court over 50 times. Ms. Sarah Chen is a forensic accountant who has worked on some of the largest corporate fraud cases in recent history. They have independently verified every piece of evidence we presented to the board." Dr. Walsh stepped forward first. "I've examined the email communications between Ms. Cross and Meridian Industries. The metadata, server logs, and digital signatures all confirm these emails are authentic and unaltered. There is no evidence of fabrication or manipulation." Mr. Kim followed. "The phone records show a clear pattern of communication between Ms. Cross and Meridian executives over a 6-month period. These records come directly from the telecommunications providers and cannot be falsified." Ms. Chen concluded, "The financial transfers and meeting logs all correlate with the communication patterns. This represents a systematic sharing of confidential information that meets the legal definition of corporate espionage." A reporter from the Wall Street Journal raised her hand. "Mr. Chen-Cross, Victoria Cross claims you've been plotting against the family for years. How do you respond to allegations that you manipulated your adoptive father?" "Harrison Cross was one of the most intelligent and perceptive men I've ever known," Ethan replied. "The idea that anyone could manipulate him for 12 years is absurd. He made his decisions based on careful observation of his children's character and capabilities. The evidence speaks for itself." "What evidence?" called out a reporter from Bloomberg. Ethan had been dreading this moment, but he knew it was necessary. Harrison documented his children's financial crimes for years. Victoria embezzled $2.3 million from the Cross Foundation. Marcus engaged in insider trading through shell companies. Even Sophia inflated charity event costs for personal gain. Harrison chose me as his successor not because I manipulated him, but because I was the only one who hadn't betrayed his trust. The room erupted with questions, but Ethan held up his hand for silence. "I take no pleasure in revealing these facts. These people are my family, despite how they've treated me. But when Victoria chose to work with our competitors to destroy the company Harrison built, she crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed." A reporter from CNBC stood up. "Ms. Cross claims you've been obsessed with gaining control of the company. Is there any truth to that? For 12 years, I lived in that family's home and was treated like an unwanted burden. I was excluded from family dinners, family photos, family decisions. If I was obsessed with anything, it was with finding a way to belong, to contribute, to earn the acceptance that was never freely given." Marcus stepped forward to the microphone. "If I may add something, I was part of the family that treated Ethan poorly, and I'm ashamed of that. But I've watched him work for years, and his dedication to this company has always been genuine. He documented problems because he cared about protecting the business, not because he was plotting against us. Why should we believe you, Mr. Cross? A reporter challenged. You stand to benefit from supporting your adoptive brother. Actually, I stand to lose everything, Marcus replied. Victoria was offering me a senior position if I supported her. By choosing to stand with Ethan, I'm risking my relationship with my sister, and potentially my future in this company. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. The questions continued for another 30 minutes, with Ethan fielding inquiries about his qualifications, his plans for the company, and his response to the ongoing takeover threats from competitors. One final question, he said, pointing to a reporter from the Financial Times. Mr. Chen-Cross, what's your message to shareholders who are concerned about the stability of Cross Industries under your leadership? Ethan looked directly into the cameras, knowing that his words would be analyzed and dissected by investors around the world. My message is simple. Judge me by my actions, not by the lies of someone who betrayed this company for personal gain. I inherited Cross Industries not because of my name or my connections, but because Harrison Cross believed I had the integrity and vision to lead it into the future. I intend to prove him right. The press conference ended, but the real battle was just beginning. Within hours, Victoria had issued a response calling the evidence a sophisticated frame job and demanding a federal investigation into Ethan's abuse of corporate resources to destroy his enemies. The media coverage was intense and divided. Some outlets focused on the verified evidence of Victoria's corporate espionage. Others played up the family drama and questioned whether Ethan was qualified to run such a large company. The stock price swung wildly throughout the day, reflecting investor uncertainty about the company's future. By closing bell, Cross Industries had lost 8% of its value, wiping out billions in market capitalization. The board is spooked, Margaret reported as Ethan reviewed the day's damage. Chairman Hartwell wants to meet with you privately tomorrow morning. What's his mood? Concerned. The media circus is exactly what he was afraid of when they gave you provisional support. Some board members are starting to wonder if the company would be better off with more traditional leadership. That evening, Ethan sat in Harrison's study, his study now, surrounded by the books and mementos of a man who had built an empire through vision, determination, and unwavering principles. On the desk was a framed photo of Harrison and David Chen from the early days of the company, two young men with dreams of changing the world. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoying the spotlight? It's about to get much brighter. A friend. The same mysterious contact who had been sending threatening messages since the inheritance was announced. Ethan stared at the phone, wondering who was behind the threats and what they were planning. A knock on the study door interrupted his thoughts. Sophia entered, looking tired but determined. I saw the press conference, she said. You did well. Did I? The stock price suggests otherwise. The stock price reflects fear and uncertainty. It doesn't reflect the truth. She sat down across from him, her expression serious. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. Something about Victoria that you need to know. What is it? She's not working alone. There's someone else, someone who's been advising her, helping her plan this campaign against you. Ethan's blood ran cold. Who? I don't know his name, but I've seen him at Victoria's apartment several times over the past month. Expensive suit, silver hair, very polished. He gives off the impression of someone with serious power and connections. Did you hear any of their conversations? Fragments. They were talking about removing obstacles and accelerating the timeline. And Ethan? They mentioned you by name. This person, whoever he is, he knows details about your life, your background, things that aren't public knowledge. The threatening messages suddenly made more sense. Victoria wasn't just acting out of wounded pride. She was being guided by someone with resources and information that went far beyond what she could access on her own. There's something else, Sophia continued. I think they know about the federal investigation into Victoria's activities. They were talking about managing the narrative and controlling the damage. It sounded like they have inside information about the investigation. Someone in law enforcement? Or someone with connections to law enforcement? Ethan, I think you're dealing with something much bigger than a family dispute. I think there are people with serious power who want you to fail, and they're using Victoria as their weapon. Ethan thought about the anonymous messages, the perfectly timed media attacks, the sophisticated nature of Victoria's public relations campaign. She was smart, but this level of coordination suggested professional help. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything, you're my brother. Because Dad chose you for a reason, and I'm starting to understand what that reason was. And because I'm tired of being afraid of Victoria and whoever she's working with. This could be dangerous, Sophia. If these people are as powerful as you think, they won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way. Then we'd better make sure they don't succeed. She stood up, her expression more determined than Ethan had ever seen it. What do you need me to do? Be careful. Keep your eyes and ears open. And if you see this mysterious advisor again, try to get a photo or find out who he is. I will. And Ethan, whatever happens, know that you have family who believes in you. Real family. After Sophia left, Ethan sat alone in the study, feeling the weight of conspiracy closing around him. Victoria's betrayal was just the beginning. Somewhere in the shadows, powerful people were orchestrating his downfall, and he still didn't know who they were or why they wanted him to fail. But he also felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the support of people who genuinely cared about him. Marcus and Sophia had chosen to stand with him despite the risks. The senior leadership team was rallying around his vision for the company. Even some board members were beginning to see past the media circus to the substance of his leadership. The invisible sun had become visible, and his enemies were finally showing themselves. The real battle for Cross Industries was about to begin, and Ethan was ready to fight for everything Harrison and his father had built. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. FBI Financial Crimes Division, Agent Martinez speaking. Agent Martinez, this is Ethan Chen-Cross, CEO of Cross Industries. I need to report a conspiracy involving corporate espionage, market manipulation, and threats against a Fortune 50 company. Mr. Chen-Cross, we've been expecting your call. The game was changing, and Ethan was no longer playing defense. It was time to go on the attack. Chapter 7, The Shadow War. Agent Sarah Martinez was not what Ethan had expected from an FBI financial crimes investigator. She was young, probably early 30s, with sharp eyes and an intensity that suggested she'd seen enough corporate corruption to fuel a lifetime of cynicism. They met in a secure conference room at the FBI's field office, away from the media circus surrounding Cross Industries. We've been monitoring the situation at your company for several weeks, Agent Martinez began, spreading files across the table. Victoria Cross's communications with Meridian Industries triggered our automated surveillance systems. Corporate espionage involving companies of your size gets our attention quickly. Several weeks? You knew about this before I did. We knew someone at Cross Industries was sharing confidential information with competitors. We didn't know it was a family member until you provided the evidence to your board. Ethan studied the files she'd laid out. Phone records, financial transactions, travel logs. A comprehensive picture of Victoria's activities over the past 6 months. There's something else, Agent Martinez continued. Victoria Cross isn't our primary concern anymore. She's small fish compared to what we think is really happening here. What do you mean? We believe your company is being targeted by a sophisticated network of investors and corporate raiders who specialize in destabilizing large companies and acquiring them at below-market prices. Victoria was just their inside source. She pulled out a photograph of a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and cold eyes. Do you recognize this man? Ethan studied the photo. No, but my sister Sophia described someone who matches this description. She's seen him meeting with Victoria. His name is Richard Blackwood. Former investment banker, current head of a private equity firm called Apex Capital. He's been involved in hostile takeovers worth over $50 billion in the past decade. And you think he's targeting Cross Industries? We know he is. Apex Capital has been quietly acquiring Cross Industries stock through shell companies for the past year. They now own approximately 8% of your company. Not enough to trigger disclosure requirements, but enough to have significant influence if they can destabilize your leadership. The pieces were starting to fall into place. So Victoria's betrayal wasn't just about family resentment. She was being used. Blackwood is very good at finding people with grievances and turning them into weapons. Victoria's anger about the inheritance made her the perfect asset. Agent Martinez pulled out another file. But here's what really concerns us. Blackwood's pattern is to destabilize a company's leadership, crash the stock price, then swoop in with a rescue acquisition at a fraction of the company's true value. He's done it successfully 12 times in the past decade. What happens to the companies after he acquires them? Asset stripping, mass layoffs, pension fund raids. He extracts maximum value in the shortest time possible, then sells off the pieces. The companies rarely survive intact. Ethan felt sick. Cross Industries employed over 200,000 people worldwide. The thought of Blackwood destroying everything Harrison and his father had built was unbearable. What can we do to stop him? That's where it gets complicated. Blackwood is very careful to stay within legal boundaries. He doesn't break laws, he exploits weaknesses in the system. The only way to stop him is to prove he's engaged in market manipulation or securities fraud. And have you found evidence of that? Agent Martinez hesitated. We're building a case, but it's going to take time. Months, maybe years. In the meantime, he's going to keep attacking your company through proxies like Victoria. What about the threatening messages I've been receiving? We're tracing those, but they're coming through encrypted channels that will take time to crack. Blackwood's people are professionals. They know how to cover their tracks. Ethan left the FBI meeting feeling more determined than ever, but also more aware of the scope of the challenge he faced. This wasn't just about family drama or corporate politics. It was about protecting thousands of jobs and preserving a legacy that went back decades. Back at Cross Industries, he called an emergency meeting with Marcus and the senior leadership team. It was time to stop playing defense and start fighting back. We're dealing with a coordinated attack on this company, Ethan began, laying out what he'd learned from Agent Martinez. Richard Blackwood and Apex Capital are using Victoria as a weapon to destabilize our leadership and crash our stock price so they can acquire us cheaply. Dr. Sarah Kim, the CTO, leaned forward. How do we fight back against something like this? We do what this company has always done best. We innovate. We find solutions that our enemies don't expect. What kind of solutions? Asked Michael Torres, the CFO. First, we accelerate our most promising projects. The Renewable Energy Division has been developing breakthrough battery technology that could revolutionize electric vehicles. The Biotech Division is close to FDA approval for a cancer treatment that could save millions of lives. We fast-track these innovations and announce them publicly, showing investors that Cross Industries is moving forward, not backward. Marcus nodded approvingly. Positive news to counter the negative narrative. Second, we go on the offensive against Blackwood. We investigate his past acquisitions, document the damage he's done to other companies, and make that information public. We show investors and regulators exactly what happens to companies that fall into his hands. That's risky, warned Jennifer Walsh, the COO. Blackwood has resources to fight back, and he's not afraid to use them. He's already fighting us, Ethan replied. The only question is whether we fight back or let him destroy us without resistance. What about Victoria? Marcus asked. She's still out there, still making accusations. Victoria is a symptom, not the disease. If we can expose Blackwood's manipulation, her credibility will collapse on its own. The meeting continued for 2 hours, with the team developing a comprehensive strategy to counter Blackwood's attacks. It was ambitious, risky, and would require perfect execution. But it was also their best chance to save the company. That evening, Ethan was working late in his office when Margaret knocked on the door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent and personal." "Who is it?" "Victoria Cross." Ethan's blood ran cold. After everything that had happened, Victoria had the audacity to show up at his office? "Should I call security?" Margaret asked. "No. Send her in. But stay close in case I need help." Victoria entered the office looking haggard and desperate, a far cry from the polished executive who had threatened him just days earlier. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smudged, and there was a wild look in her eyes that suggested she was operating on very little sleep. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I think you've said enough to the media." "Forget the media. Forget everything I said. I'm here to warn you." "Warn me about what?" Victoria glanced around nervously, as if she expected to be overheard. "About Richard Blackwood. About what he's really planning." "I already know about Blackwood." "No, you don't. You know he wants to acquire the company. You don't know how far he's willing to go to make that happen." She sat down without being invited, her hands shaking slightly. "He's not just planning a hostile takeover, Ethan. He's planning to destroy you personally. Your reputation, your freedom, maybe even your life." "What are you talking about?" "He has people inside the FBI, inside the SEC, inside the media. He's been building a case against you for months, Fake evidence of insider trading, market manipulation, even embezzlement. He's going to frame you for crimes you didn't commit. Ethan stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Why are you telling me this? Yesterday you were calling me a manipulative fraud on national television. Because I finally understand what I've gotten myself into. Victoria's voice cracked with emotion. I thought Blackwood was just helping me get what was rightfully mine. I thought he was a legitimate businessman who saw the value in experienced leadership. I was wrong. What changed your mind? He showed me the files he's been building on you. Forged bank records, fabricated communications, manufactured evidence that would make you look like the biggest corporate criminal since Bernie Madoff. And when I asked him why he needed to go so far, he told me the truth. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. Blackwood's cultured voice filled the office. The boy is more dangerous than his adoptive siblings because he actually has integrity. People like that can't be bought or intimidated. They have to be destroyed completely. Once he's in federal prison, the company will be vulnerable, and we can acquire it for pennies on the dollar. Ethan felt his blood turn to ice. You recorded him? I started recording our conversations after I realized he was using me. I thought I was being smart, gathering insurance in case he tried to betray me. But then I heard him talking about having you killed if the legal frame-up didn't work. Killed? He said it would look like suicide. The disgraced CEO who couldn't handle the shame of his crimes. Very neat, very clean, very believable. Victoria's hands were shaking as she put the phone away. I may be ambitious, I may be ruthless, but I'm not a murderer. And I won't be part of destroying someone who's actually trying to do the right thing. Why should I believe you? This could be another manipulation, another attempt to get close to me so you can do more damage. Because I'm giving you this. She handed him a flash drive. Everything I recorded, every document Blackwood shared with me, every detail of his plan to destroy you and acquire the company. It's all there. Ethan took the drive, still not entirely trusting her motives. What do you want in return? Protection. Blackwood knows I've turned against him. He's already frozen my assets, claiming I violated our agreement. His people have been following me, and I'm scared of what they might do. You could go to the FBI. With what credibility? I'm the woman who committed corporate espionage and then lied about it on national television. Who's going to believe me now? She had a point. Victoria had destroyed her own credibility so thoroughly that even the truth would sound like another manipulation. There's something else, Victoria continued. Blackwood isn't working alone. He has partners, other private equity firms that specialize in this kind of corporate raiding. Cross Industries isn't their only target. They're planning similar attacks on at least 6 other major companies. A coordinated assault on American business. Exactly. They're trying to destabilize entire sectors of the economy so they can acquire valuable assets at fire sale prices. It's economic warfare on a massive scale. Ethan thought about the implications. If Blackwood and his partners succeeded, they could control significant portions of the technology, energy, and healthcare sectors. The concentration of power would be unprecedented and dangerous. What do you propose we do? We work together. I help you expose Blackwood's conspiracy, and you help me avoid federal prison for the crimes I actually did commit. You want immunity in exchange for cooperation? I want a chance to make things right. I know I've done terrible things, Ethan. I've betrayed the family, betrayed the company, betrayed everything Dad stood for. But I can't undo that. All I can do is try to stop something even worse from happening. Ethan studied her face, looking for signs of deception. What he saw was genuine fear, and what might have been the beginning of real remorse. If I agree to this, if I trust you with this information, and you betray me again, I know, you'll destroy me completely. And I'll deserve it. Victoria met his eyes directly. But Ethan, if we don't stop Blackwood, there won't be a company left to fight over. He'll strip it for parts and leave thousands of people unemployed. Is your anger at me really more important than protecting Dad's legacy? She was right, and they both knew it. Whatever personal grievances existed between them, the threat to Cross Industries and its employees was bigger than family drama. Okay, Ethan said finally. We work together, but this doesn't erase what you've done, and it doesn't mean I trust you. You're going to have to earn that trust through your actions. I understand. And Victoria, if you're playing some deeper game that I don't see, if this is all an elaborate setup to get close to me so you can do more damage, I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in federal prison. I know, and I accept that risk because stopping Blackwood is more important than my own survival. They spent the next 2 hours going through the contents of the flash drive. The evidence was damning: recordings of Blackwood discussing market manipulation, documents outlining his plans to frame Ethan, communications with corrupt officials who were helping facilitate the conspiracy. "This is enough to bring down his entire operation," Ethan said, reviewing the files. "If we can get it to the right people." "Blackwood has contacts throughout the government. We need to be very careful about who we trust. I know someone at the FBI who's already investigating this. Agent Martinez seems clean." "Seems isn't good enough. Blackwood has been planning this for over a year. He's had time to identify and compromise key people in law enforcement." Ethan thought about this. Victoria was right. They couldn't afford to trust the wrong person with information this sensitive. What about going public? Release everything to the media simultaneously. Make it impossible for Blackwood to suppress. He owns pieces of several major media outlets. And the ones he doesn't own, he can influence through advertising dollars and political connections. "Then what do you suggest?" Victoria was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We need allies. Other companies that Blackwood is targeting, other executives who understand what's at stake. If we can build a coalition, we can fight back collectively." "How do we identify his other targets?" "I have a list. Companies he's been researching, executives he's been investigating. We reach out to them quietly, share what we know, and build a united front against his attacks." It was a risky strategy, but it might be their only chance to stop Blackwood before he could complete his plan. "There's one more thing," Victoria said as they prepared to end the meeting. "Blackwood mentioned that he has someone inside Cross Industries. Someone who's been feeding him information about your activities, your plans, your vulnerabilities." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Who?" "I don't know." He was very careful not to reveal the source. "But whoever it is, they have access to high-level information. Board meetings, strategic planning sessions, maybe even your personal communications." The thought that someone he trusted was betraying him was almost unbearable. But it would explain how Blackwood had been able to stay one step ahead, how he'd known exactly when and how to attack. "We need to find this mole," Ethan said. "Carefully. If Blackwood realizes we're onto his inside source, he might accelerate his timeline. We could find ourselves facing criminal charges or worse before we're ready to fight back." As Victoria prepared to leave, she turned back to Ethan with an expression he'd never seen before: genuine vulnerability. "I know you have no reason to forgive me," she said quietly. "I know I've done things that can't be undone. But I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Dad was right to choose you. You're a better leader than I ever would have been." "Victoria, let me finish. I spent 12 years resenting you for being everything I wasn't: principled, hardworking, genuinely caring about other people. I told myself you were weak, that your integrity was naivety. But watching you handle this crisis, seeing how you've brought people together and fought for what's right, I finally understand what Dad saw in you." She paused at the door. "I can't undo the damage I've done to our relationship. But maybe I can help you save the company. Maybe that's enough." After she left, Ethan sat alone in his office, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he'd learned. Blackwood's conspiracy was bigger and more dangerous than he'd imagined. The threat to Cross Industries was existential, and the stakes kept getting higher. But for the first time since this crisis began, he felt like he might actually have a chance to win. Victoria's evidence could expose Blackwood's entire operation. The coalition strategy could unite his enemies' targets against them. And despite everything that had happened between them, he was beginning to believe that Victoria's conversion was genuine. The invisible son had become the target of one of the most sophisticated corporate attacks in American history. But he was no longer fighting alone, and he was no longer fighting blind. The shadow war was about to become very public, and Ethan was ready to bring the light. Chapter 8: The Coalition. The next morning, Ethan called an emergency meeting with Agent Martinez, bringing Victoria and the flash drive evidence to the FBI field office. The agent's reaction to seeing Victoria was immediate and hostile. "Ms. Cross, you're under federal investigation for corporate espionage. You shouldn't be here without an attorney." "I'm here to cooperate," Victoria said calmly. "I have information about a conspiracy that makes my crimes look like shoplifting." Agent Martinez looked skeptical, but her expression changed as they played Blackwood's recordings and reviewed the documents on the flash drive. "This is extensive," she said after an hour of reviewing evidence. "If this is authentic, we're looking at the largest coordinated attack on American corporations in decades." It's authentic, Victoria confirmed. I recorded most of it myself. Why should we believe you? You've already proven you're willing to lie and manipulate for personal gain. Because I'm giving you everything. Every recording, every document, every detail of Blackwood's operation. I'm destroying my own life to stop something worse from happening. Agent Martinez studied Victoria's face, clearly trying to assess her credibility. What do you want in return for this cooperation? Protection from Blackwood's people, and consideration for my cooperation when it comes time for sentencing. I can't make promises about sentencing, but I can arrange protection if the threat is credible. The threat is very credible, Ethan interjected. Blackwood has already demonstrated he's willing to commit serious crimes to achieve his goals. Victoria is now a liability to him. Agent Martinez nodded slowly. We'll need to verify this evidence independently, but if it checks out, we can move forward with a broader investigation. How long will that take? Ethan asked. Weeks, maybe months. This kind of conspiracy involves multiple jurisdictions, international financial transactions, and potentially corrupt government officials. We have to be very careful about how we proceed. We don't have months, Victoria said urgently. Blackwood is planning to accelerate his timeline. He's going to move against Ethan within days, not weeks. What kind of move? Criminal charges. He has fabricated evidence that will make Ethan look guilty of securities fraud and embezzlement. Once he's arrested, the company's stock will crash, and Blackwood can move in with his acquisition offer. Agent Martinez looked troubled. If he has people inside law enforcement, he might be able to manipulate the system to get those charges filed quickly. Then we need to move faster, Ethan said. What if we go public with this information? Force Blackwood to defend himself instead of attacking us. That's risky. If we tip him off before we have all the evidence we need, he could destroy records, eliminate witnesses, or flee the country. And if we wait too long, he destroys Cross Industries and moves on to his next target. They spent another hour developing a strategy that balanced the need for speed with the requirements of a proper investigation. Agent Martinez would fast-track the verification of Victoria's evidence, while Ethan and Victoria reached out to other potential targets to build a coalition of resistance. Be very careful who you trust, Agent Martinez warned as they prepared to leave. If Blackwood has people inside the FBI, he might know about this meeting already. That afternoon, Ethan and Victoria began making calls to the CEOs of companies on Blackwood's target list. The conversations were delicate. They needed to share enough information to get attention without revealing so much that word would get back to Blackwood. Their first call was to Jennifer Walsh, CEO of Meridian Technologies, a renewable energy company that had been experiencing mysterious financial difficulties. Mr. Chen-Cross, Walsh said when Ethan identified himself. I have to say, I'm surprised to hear from you given the recent media coverage. Ms. Walsh, I'm calling because I believe your company is under attack by the same people who have been targeting Cross Industries. I have evidence of a coordinated conspiracy involving market manipulation and corporate espionage. There was a long pause. What kind of evidence? Recordings, documents, financial records. Proof that a private equity firm called Apex Capital has been systematically destabilizing companies to acquire them at below-market prices. And you think they're targeting Meridian? I know they are. Your company is on their list, along with 5 others. They've been studying your operations, identifying vulnerabilities, and planning their attack. Walsh was quiet for a moment. Mr. Chen-Cross, if what you're saying is true, it would explain a lot of the problems we've been having. Unexplained stock price volatility, negative media coverage that seems coordinated, regulatory challenges that appeared out of nowhere. Exactly. They're using the same playbook against all of us. What do you propose we do about it? We fight back together, pool our resources, share information, and expose their conspiracy before they can complete their acquisitions. That's a big risk. If we're wrong, if this is some kind of elaborate deception, then you're no worse off than you are now. But if we're right and we do nothing, your company will be the next one destroyed. Walsh agreed to a face-to-face meeting, as did 3 of the other 5 CEOs they contacted. The remaining 2 were either too skeptical or too scared to get involved. The coalition meeting was held at a private club in Manhattan, away from corporate offices and potential surveillance. The attendees were some of the most powerful business leaders in America, but they all shared a common vulnerability. They were being hunted by predators who specialized in destroying successful companies. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan began, we're here because we're all facing the same threat. Richard Blackwood and Apex Capital have declared war on American business, and we're their primary targets. He laid out the evidence Victoria had provided, playing recordings and showing documents that detailed Blackwood's strategy. The reaction was immediate and intense. "This is economic terrorism," said David Park, CEO of Advanced Biotech Solutions. "They're not just trying to acquire companies, they're trying to destroy entire industries." "The question is, what can we do about it?" asked Jennifer Walsh. "Blackwood has resources, connections, and apparently people inside the government. How do we fight someone like that?" "We use our own resources and connections," Victoria said, speaking for the first time. "We have relationships with media outlets, political leaders, and regulatory agencies. We use those relationships to expose what Blackwood is doing." "And who are you exactly?" asked Michael Torres, CEO of Quantum Computing Corporation. "The news reports say you were involved in corporate espionage yourself." "I was. Blackwood used my resentment against my adoptive brother to turn me into a weapon against Cross Industries. But when I realized what he was really planning, I chose to do the right thing." "How do we know this isn't another manipulation? How do we know you're not still working for Blackwood?" Ethan stepped forward. "Because she's risking everything to be here. Blackwood has already frozen her assets and put her life in danger. If she was still working for him, she wouldn't need our protection." The meeting continued for 3 hours, with the group developing a comprehensive strategy to counter Blackwood's attacks. They would coordinate their legal defenses, share intelligence about suspicious activities, and launch a joint public relations campaign to expose the conspiracy. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," Ethan said as the meeting wound down. "Blackwood has inside sources at several of our companies. People who are feeding him information about our strategies and vulnerabilities." "How do we identify these moles?" asked David Park. "Carefully. We can't afford to create a climate of paranoia and suspicion within our organizations. But we need to be strategic about what information we share and with whom." Jennifer Walsh leaned forward. "I suggest we create a secure communication channel for this coalition. Something Blackwood's people can't penetrate." "Agreed. And we need to move fast. According to Victoria's intelligence, Blackwood is planning to accelerate his timeline. We may only have days before he makes his next major move." As the meeting broke up, the CEOs exchanged contact information and agreed to daily check-ins through encrypted channels. For the first time since this crisis began, Ethan felt like he had real allies in the fight against Blackwood. But that feeling of optimism was short-lived. The next morning, Ethan woke to his phone buzzing incessantly. Margaret was calling with panic in her voice. "Sir, you need to get to the office immediately. The FBI is here with a warrant for your arrest." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "What are the charges?" "Securities fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to manipulate stock prices." "Sir, they have boxes of evidence. This looks very serious." Blackwood had moved faster than they'd anticipated. While Ethan was building his coalition, his enemy was executing the frame-up Victoria had warned him about. "Don't let them into my office until I get there. Call our legal team immediately." "I already have. Mr. Sterling is on his way." Ethan dressed quickly and raced to Cross Industries headquarters, his mind spinning with the implications. If he was arrested, the company's stock would crash, the board would panic, and Blackwood would be perfectly positioned to swoop in with his acquisition offer. The scene at the office was chaos. FBI agents were carrying boxes of documents out of the building while reporters and camera crews captured every moment. The stock price was already plummeting in pre-market trading. Agent Martinez was waiting for him in the lobby, her expression grim and apologetic. "Mr. Chen-Cross, I'm sorry, but I have to place you under arrest." "Sarah, you know this is fabricated evidence. We just met yesterday about Blackwood's conspiracy." "I know, but the warrant came from a different division. Someone higher up the chain made this decision, and I don't have the authority to stop it." She read him his rights while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Ethan saw Victoria watching from across the street, her face pale with shock and fear. The arrest made international headlines within hours. Cross Industries CEO arrested on fraud charges dominated every business news outlet. The company's stock price fell 30% in a single day, wiping out billions in market value. From his jail cell, Ethan watched the coverage on a small television, feeling helpless as everything he'd worked to build crumbled around him. The board was meeting in emergency session. The senior leadership team was scrambling to maintain operations, and Blackwood was probably celebrating the success of his plan. Robert Sterling arrived that evening with bail paperwork and a grim expression. "The charges are serious, Ethan. The prosecution claims to have bank records showing you transferred millions of dollars to offshore accounts, email communications discussing stock manipulation, and witness testimony about your criminal activities. All fabricated. Victoria warned me this was coming. I know, but proving that in court will be difficult. The evidence looks very convincing, and the prosecution has resources we can't match. What about the coalition? What about the evidence against Blackwood? Agent Martinez is trying to get the investigation expedited, but her superiors are focused on your case now. Blackwood's conspiracy has been pushed to the back burner." Ethan was released on bail the next morning, but the damage was done. Cross Industries stock continued to fall, major clients were reconsidering their contracts, and the board was openly discussing the need for new leadership. The emergency board meeting was held that afternoon, and the atmosphere was toxic. Several members who had supported Ethan just days earlier were now calling for his resignation. "The company can't survive this kind of scandal," said board member James Morrison. "Whether the charges are true or not, Ethan's continued leadership is destroying shareholder value. We need to consider all options," added Patricia Vance, "including a potential acquisition offer that might stabilize the situation." Ethan knew exactly what acquisition offer she was referring to. Blackwood was probably already preparing his bid, timing it perfectly to look like a rescue rather than a hostile takeover. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan said, standing to address the board, "I understand your concerns, but I'm asking you to look beyond the immediate crisis to the bigger picture. These charges are part of a coordinated attack on this company by people who want to acquire it at a fraction of its true value." "That's a serious accusation," said William Hartwell. "Do you have proof?" "I have recordings, documents, and witness testimony that prove Richard Blackwood and Apex Capital have been orchestrating this entire crisis. They used my sister Victoria to commit corporate espionage. They fabricated evidence to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, and they're planning similar attacks on other major corporations." "Where is this evidence?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Warren. "With the FBI. Agent Martinez is investigating the conspiracy, but the process is being slowed by people within the government who may be working with Blackwood." Several board members exchanged skeptical glances. The story sounded paranoid, even though Ethan knew it was true. "Even if what you're saying is accurate," said Robert Chen, "the immediate reality is that this company is in crisis. Our stock price has fallen 40% in 2 days. Our clients are nervous. Our employees are scared. We need leadership that can restore confidence. And you think replacing me with someone chosen by the people who created this crisis will restore confidence? We think replacing you with experienced leadership that isn't facing federal criminal charges might help," Patricia Vance said bluntly. The vote was close, 7-5 in favor of requesting Ethan's resignation. Not enough to remove him immediately, but enough to send a clear message that his support was eroding. "I won't resign," Ethan said after the vote was announced. "This company is under attack, and I won't abandon it to the people who are trying to destroy it." "Then we'll have to consider other options," William Hartwell said sadly. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I believe you're a good man, but the board has a fiduciary duty to the shareholders." That evening, Ethan sat in his office as the sun set. Over the city, feeling more alone than he had since his early days in foster care. The coalition of CEOs was still supportive, but they were dealing with their own crises as Blackwood's attacks intensified. Victoria was in hiding, afraid for her life. Marcus and Sophia were standing by him, but they had no real power to help. His phone rang. It was Agent Martinez. "Ethan, I have news. We've verified Victoria's evidence, and we're ready to move against Blackwood. But we need more time to build an airtight case." "I don't have more time. The board is about to remove me, and once that happens, Blackwood wins. There might be another way. What if we could get Blackwood to incriminate himself? Set up a situation where he reveals his conspiracy on record." "How?" "Victoria. She could reach out to him, claim she wants to make a deal. Get him to admit what he's done while wearing a wire. That's incredibly dangerous. If Blackwood suspects she's working with us, he'll have her killed. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to stop him before he completes his plan." Ethan thought about it. Victoria had already risked everything to expose Blackwood's conspiracy. Would she be willing to risk her life to finish the job? "Let me talk to her," he said finally. "But Sarah?" If we do this, if Victoria agrees to wear a wire, you have to promise me you'll protect her. Whatever happens, she doesn't deserve to die for trying to do the right thing. I promise. We'll have agents watching her every moment. As Ethan hung up the phone, he realized that the fate of Cross Industries, and possibly several other major corporations, now rested on the shoulders of the woman who had started this crisis. Victoria Cross, the sister who had betrayed him, might be the only person who could save him. The irony wasn't lost on him. The invisible son who had become visible was now depending on the visibility of someone who had tried to make him disappear forever. But sometimes, redemption came from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the people who hurt you the most were the only ones who could heal the wounds they'd created. The final battle for Cross Industries was about to begin, and everything would depend on whether Victoria Cross had the courage to face the monster she had helped create. Chapter 9: The Wire. Victoria Cross sat in the FBI safe house, staring at the small recording device that would either save Cross Industries or get her killed. Agent Martinez had spent an hour explaining how the wire worked, but Victoria's mind kept drifting to the conversation she was about to have with Richard Blackwood. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said, sitting across from her in the sterile government facility. "We can find another way." "No, we can't. Blackwood is too smart, too careful. This is the only way to get him to admit what he's done." Victoria's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the recording device. "Besides, I owe you this. I owe the company this. You don't owe me anything. You've already risked everything to expose his conspiracy. I've risked everything to clean up the mess I made. There's a difference." Victoria looked at Ethan with eyes that held a mixture of determination and fear. "Do you know what the worst part of all this has been?" "What?" "Realizing that Dad was right about everything. About you, about me, about what kind of leaders we'd be. I spent 12 years resenting you for being chosen, and it turns out you were the only one worthy of being chosen." "Victoria, let me finish. I need to say this in case something goes wrong today." She took a deep breath. "You're a better person than I am, Ethan. You're a better leader, a better sibling, a better heir to Dad's legacy. I can't undo the damage I've done to our relationship, but maybe I can prevent Blackwood from destroying everything Dad built." Agent Martinez entered the room with a team of technicians who began fitting Victoria with the recording equipment. The wire was sophisticated but nearly invisible, designed to capture clear audio even in challenging environments. "Remember," Agent Martinez said as they tested the equipment, "your goal is to get Blackwood to admit to the conspiracy, the market manipulation, and the fabricated evidence against Ethan. Don't push too hard or he'll get suspicious." "I understand. We'll have agents positioned around the meeting location, but they won't be able to intervene immediately if something goes wrong. You'll be on your own for at least the first few minutes of any confrontation." Victoria nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I can handle Blackwood. I've been handling men like him my whole career." "This is different," Ethan warned. "He's not just ruthless, he's desperate. If he realizes you're working against him, he won't hesitate to eliminate you as a threat. Then I'll have to make sure he doesn't realize it." The meeting was set for that afternoon at Blackwood's private club, an exclusive establishment where powerful men made deals that shaped the global economy. Victoria would tell him she wanted to negotiate a settlement, her cooperation in exchange for protection, and a share of the profits from Cross Industries' acquisition. As Victoria prepared to leave for the meeting, Ethan felt a strange mixture of admiration and terror. The woman who had tried to destroy him was now risking her life to save everything he cared about. "Victoria," he said as she reached the door, "whatever happens today, I want you to know that I forgive you. For all of it." She turned back with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know. And Victoria, come back alive. We still have a lot of work to do rebuilding this family." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. "I'll do my best." 2 hours later, Victoria walked into the oak-paneled dining room of the Metropolitan Club, where Richard Blackwood was waiting with a glass of wine and a predatory smile. He was exactly as Sophia had described, distinguished, polished, and radiating the kind of power that came from destroying other people's lives. "Victoria, my dear," Blackwood said, rising to greet her. "You look terrible. The stress of recent events, I assume?" "The stress of being hunted by federal agents while my assets are frozen," Victoria replied, taking a seat across from him. "We need to talk, Richard." "Indeed we do. Your little betrayal has caused considerable complications to our timeline. My betrayal? You mean my refusal to participate in murder? Blackwood's smile didn't waver. Such dramatic language. I prefer to think of it as removing obstacles to progress. Victoria felt the wire against her skin and reminded herself to stay calm, to let Blackwood incriminate himself naturally. Well, your obstacle is still very much alive and still very much in control of Cross Industries. The criminal charges didn't work as planned. A temporary setback. The board is already losing confidence in young Mr. Chen-Cross. It's only a matter of time before they remove him and open the door for new leadership. And what happens to me in this scenario? I'm facing federal charges for corporate espionage. My reputation is destroyed, and my own brother has turned against me. Your brother was always going to turn against you eventually. He's too self-righteous to understand the realities of business. Blackwood leaned forward, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. But you, Victoria, you understand that sometimes you have to break a few rules to achieve greatness. Is that what we're calling it? Breaking rules? We're calling it evolution. The old model of corporate leadership, family dynasties, sentimental attachments to legacy, it's obsolete. The future belongs to those who can adapt, who can see opportunities where others see obstacles. And Cross Industries is an opportunity? Cross Industries is a perfect example of wasted potential. Brilliant technology, valuable assets, global reach, all of it held back by leadership that prioritizes principles over profits. Blackwood's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Under proper management, that company could be worth twice what it is today. Proper management meaning you? Meaning people who understand that business is war, and war requires ruthless tactics. Your adoptive brother thinks he can run a Fortune 50 company like a charity. He's about to learn how naive that perspective really is. Victoria felt sick listening to him talk about destroying everything Harrison had built, but she forced herself to stay focused on the mission. The fabricated evidence against Ethan. How did you manage that? The bank records, the emails, all of it looked completely authentic. Blackwood smiled with obvious pride. I have people with very specialized skills. Former intelligence operatives who know how to create convincing documentation. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you have the right resources and the right connections. Connections in law enforcement? Connections everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, regulatory officials, journalists. Influence is a commodity like any other, and I've been collecting it for decades. And if the fabricated evidence doesn't hold up in court, it doesn't need to hold up forever. It just needs to create enough doubt and chaos to destabilize the company's leadership. Once the board removes Ethan, we can move forward with the acquisition. What about the FBI investigation into your activities? Agent Martinez seems very determined. Blackwood's expression darkened slightly. Agent Martinez is a minor inconvenience. She's young, idealistic, and operating without support from her superiors. Her investigation will be quietly transferred to other agents who understand the importance of not interfering with legitimate business activities. You have people inside the FBI? I have people everywhere, Victoria. That's how you survive in this business. You make sure you have friends in all the right places. Victoria felt the weight of what she was hearing. Blackwood wasn't just admitting to corporate crimes. He was revealing a network of corruption that reached into the highest levels of government. There's something I need to know, she said, leaning forward. The other companies on your target list, are you planning the same kind of attacks against them? Of course. Cross Industries is just the beginning. We have similar operations planned for Meridian Technologies, Advanced Biotech Solutions, Quantum Computing Corp., and 3 others. By the end of the year, we'll control significant portions of the technology, energy, and healthcare sectors. That's economic warfare on a massive scale. That's business evolution. The old model of competition is inefficient. Why compete when you can simply acquire your competitors and eliminate the competition entirely? And the thousands of employees who will lose their jobs when you strip these companies for assets? Blackwood shrugged. Collateral damage. Progress always requires sacrifice, and unfortunately, it's usually the weak who end up sacrificing for the strong. Victoria felt rage building inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She was getting everything the FBI needed to bring down Blackwood's entire operation. What do you need from me to make this work? Your continued cooperation in destabilizing Ethan's leadership. Public statements questioning his competence, behind the scenes lobbying with board members, whatever it takes to accelerate his removal. And in exchange? Protection from prosecution, a generous financial settlement, and a position in the new corporate structure once we complete the acquisition. How generous? $50 million, plus stock options that could be worth significantly more if our expansion plans succeed. Victoria pretended to consider the offer, while making sure the wire was capturing every word. "There's one more thing I need to know," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "What happens if Ethan doesn't give up? What if he keeps fighting even after the board removes him?" Blackwood's smile turned cold. "Then we move to more permanent solutions. I've dealt with stubborn obstacles before, Victoria. There are always ways to ensure that problems disappear." "You're talking about having him killed." "I'm talking about removing threats to our business interests. Sometimes that requires extreme measures." Victoria felt her blood run cold, but she pressed on. "And you've done this before? Eliminated people who stood in your way?" "Let's just say that several former CEOs who refused to cooperate with our acquisition offers have experienced unfortunate accidents. Car crashes, heart attacks, suicides brought on by the stress of criminal investigations. These things happen more often than you might think." The casual way he discussed murder made Victoria's stomach turn, but she had what she needed. Blackwood had just confessed to conspiracy, market manipulation, bribery, and multiple murders. "I think we have a deal," she said, extending her hand across the table. Blackwood shook it, his grip firm and confident. "Excellent. I knew you were too smart to let sentiment interfere with business. When do we start?" "Immediately. I want you to call a press conference for tomorrow morning. Announce that you've discovered new evidence of Ethan's criminal activities. Claim that he threatened you to keep quiet about his crimes. Make it personal, make it emotional, make it devastating." "What kind of evidence?" "I'll have my people prepare something convincing. Bank records showing payments to you in exchange for your silence, recorded phone calls where he admits to the crimes. Whatever it takes to destroy his credibility completely. More fabricated evidence. More effective evidence. The truth is whatever we can make people believe, Victoria. And I'm very good at making people believe what I want them to believe." As Victoria prepared to leave, Blackwood placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm glad you came to your senses, my dear. For a moment, I was concerned you might do something foolish like trying to work against me. I'm a survivor, Richard. I always choose the winning side. Smart girl. That's why you'll go far in this new world we're creating." Victoria walked out of the club feeling like she needed a shower. Blackwood's casual discussion of murder and corruption had been even worse than she'd expected. But she'd gotten everything the FBI needed to bring down his entire operation. Agent Martinez was waiting in an unmarked van around the corner, along with a team of. In the front row, Marcus sat with the senior leadership team, having earned his position as Vice President of Strategic Development through hard work and genuine contribution rather than family connections. Sophia was there too, having transformed the Cross Foundation into one of the most effective charitable organizations in the country. And in the back of the room, Victoria watched quietly. She had completed her community service and was now working as a consultant, helping other companies identify and prevent the kind of corporate vulnerabilities that Blackwood had exploited. It was honest work, meaningful work, and it was slowly rebuilding her reputation and her relationship with her family. "The past year has taught us that family isn't just about blood or legal documents," Ethan continued. "It's about choosing to stand together when everything seems to be falling apart. It's about forgiveness, redemption, and the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult." After the meeting, the Cross family gathered in Ethan's office for their weekly dinner, a tradition they had started 6 months earlier as part of their ongoing effort to rebuild their relationships. "Great speech," Marcus said, loosening his tie. "Very inspiring." "Very true," Sophia added. "I still can't believe how much has changed in just 1 year." "I can," Victoria said quietly. "We finally became the family Dad always wanted us to be. It just took almost losing everything to get there." Ethan looked around the table at his siblings, feeling a warmth and contentment he had never experienced during his years as the invisible son. "There's something I want to tell you all," he said. "Something I've been thinking about a lot lately." They looked at him expectantly. "For 12 years, I felt like an outsider in this family. I thought that if I could just prove myself worthy, if I could just earn your acceptance, then I would finally belong somewhere." "Ethan," Victoria started, but he held up his hand. "Let me finish. What I've realized is that I was looking for belonging in the wrong place. I was trying to earn something that can't be earned: love, acceptance, family. Those things aren't rewards for good behavior. They're gifts we give each other freely, or not at all. So what changed? Marcus asked. I stopped trying to earn your love and started trying to deserve it. I stopped focusing on what I could get from this family and started thinking about what I could give to it. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I already belonged. I just needed to believe it myself. Sophia wiped away a tear. We wasted so many years. We didn't waste them, Ethan said. We needed them. All of us. I needed to learn who I was when I wasn't trying to please everyone else. You needed to learn what really mattered when everything else was stripped away. And Victoria needed to discover that there's more to life than winning at any cost. So what happens now? Victoria asked. Where do we go from here? Forward, Ethan said simply. Together. As a family. As the evening wound down and his siblings prepared to leave, Ethan walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, other families were struggling with their own conflicts. Other companies were facing their own crises. Other people were trying to figure out where they belonged in the world. His phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Martinez. Blackwood sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Justice served. Ethan smiled and deleted the message. Blackwood was the past. The future was what mattered now. On his desk was a framed photo that hadn't been there a year ago. A picture of the entire Cross family taken at last month's company picnic. Harrison and David Chen weren't in the photo, but their presence was felt in every smile, every gesture of affection, every sign that their legacy lived on in the people they had shaped. The invisible son had found his family, his purpose, and his place in the world. The $200 billion empire was secure, but more importantly, the values that had built it were secure too. And in the end, that was worth more than all the money in the world. The adopted son everyone ignored had inherited more than a business empire. He had inherited the responsibility to prove that integrity, compassion, and family loyalty were not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths to be celebrated. He had proven it beyond any doubt. The invisible son was invisible no more, and the world was better for his visibility. The end. Sometimes the people who ignore you are preparing you for the moment when the whole world will be watching. Sometimes the family that rejects you is teaching you to build a better family. And sometimes the inheritance you never expected is exactly what you were always meant to receive. This emotional story explores themes of family, belonging, redemption, and the true meaning of inheritance. Ethan's journey from invisible adopted son to powerful CEO demonstrates that real worth comes not from bloodlines or birthright, but from character, integrity, and the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. The story shows how the people who hurt us most can sometimes become our greatest allies, and how the families we choose can be stronger than the families we're born into. If you enjoy the story, kindly hit the subscribe button. Thank you.